Thank you all for being here tonight. This is the May 24, 2021 City Council and Public Hearing. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order, and I will note for the record that all members of council are present and accounted for. And we have some young gentlemen from the Cub Scouts that we'd like to come forward, if you don't mind, and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. First item up on tonight's agenda will be a presentation and proclamation. And this proclamation is for the Building Safety Month. Mr. Booker and Director Cook, would you please come forward? You want to come forward? So, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, this is a proclamation for Building Safety Month. And earlier, as I was taking a few questions from the Cub Scouts amongst our crowd today, one of the things they asked me, what was the most important thing that a mayor does? And I told them the most important thing a mayor does is help keep the people in this city safe. And that is our top priority, because if we don't do that, then not much else we do on a local level really matters. And so a lot of times people automatically think of our firemen and our police officers and the 911 emergency operators and things like that. But there's a lot more to it. And a lot of that is making sure that the buildings that we don't own or operate are safe for the occupants and the businesses in there. So that's what this is all about. And I'll turn it over to the people that actually keep you safe.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As the building official for the city of Alpharetta, it's our duty to make sure that all buildings are safe for the general public, to protect their health, welfare, and well-being. We do that through adoption of the codes along with the state of Georgia. Currently, we're under the 2018 International Residential Building Code, International Building Code, International Mechanical Code, International Plumbing Code, and the 2020 National Electrical Code. That's a lot to try to remember. Thankfully, I don't have to do that all by myself. I have a team of professionals that help do that on a daily basis. We permit each job, we complete inspections, and the International Code Council recognizes May as Building Safety Month, and it's an honor to be able to serve in this capacity, to make sure that our buildings are safe for the next generation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Director Cook?
I just want to add that under JB's leadership, we have a great team. He's been with the city for 15 years, and he also serves as the second vice president for the Building Official Association of Georgia. So what I also like about the team that he leads is it's about educating people, and it's about customer service. So that's a big part of what he does, not just distributing the code, telling people what the code is, but he wants to teach people. So done a great job.
And with that being said, we'll go ahead with the proclamation. This is a proclamation by the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, for Building Safety Month, May. Whereas the City of Alpharetta is committed to recognizing our growth and strength depends on the safety and economic value of the homes, buildings, and infrastructure that serve our citizens, both in the everyday life and in times of natural disaster. And whereas our confidence in the structural integrity of these buildings that make up our community is achieved through the devotion of vigilant guardians, building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, design professionals, laborers, and other in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings, and whereas These guardians are dedicated members of the International Code of Counsel, a U.S.-based organization that brings together local, state, and federal officials that are experts in the built environment to create and implement the highest quality codes to protect us in the buildings where we live, learn, work, worship, and play. And whereas our nation benefits economically and technologically from using the international codes that are developed by a National Voluntary Consensus Codes and Standards Developing Organization, our government is able to avoid the high cost and complexity of developing and maintaining these codes, which are the most widely adopted building safety and fire prevention codes in the nation. These modern building codes include safeguards to protect the public from natural disasters, such as hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, wildfires, floods, and earthquakes. And whereas Building Safety Month is sponsored by the International Code Council to remind the public about the critical role of our communities, largely known, unknown, guardians of public safety. Our local code officials and who assure us of safe, efficient, and livable buildings that are essential to the keeping of Americans safe, and whereas prevent, prepare, protect, building codes save. The theme for Building Safety Month 2021 encourages all Americans to raise awareness about the importance of safe and resilient construction, fire prevention, disaster mitigation, energy conservation, water safety, training the next generation in the new technologies in the construction industry. And whereas each year in the observance of Building Safety Month, people all over the world are asked to consider the commitment to improve building safety, resilience, and economic investment at home and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential service provided to all of us by the local and state building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and federal agencies in protecting lives and property. Now, therefore, we, the mayor and city council for the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2021 as Building Safety Month and encourage our citizens to join in their communities in participation in Building Safety Month activities. Proclaim this 24th day of May 2021. So the next item up on the agenda this evening is the consent agenda, and the consent agenda consists of two items. First being the council meeting minutes from the meeting of May 17th, 2021, and also the alcoholic beverage license applications, which include PH-21-AB-14, TAB Alpharetta LLC, DBA Senor Patron, 2560 Old Milton Parkway, Suite 120, and also PH-21-AB-15 HEG LLC, DBA The Hamilton, 35 Milton Avenue, Alpharetta, Georgia, 30009. Is there anyone on council who would like to remove anything from the consent agenda this evening? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
Have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell and a second by Councilman Burnett to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. So that'll wrap up the consent agenda, and we'll move on to the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. Public hearing has 3 items listed on the agenda, and the first of which will be CU-21-0/V-21-07, Westside Wine and Spirits, Cousins Westside Pod B. Mr. Woodman, I believe you have the floor on this item.
Mayor, I'm not sure if the applicant is here. I just wanted to check in the audience real quick. Is the applicant here? Okay, yes.
I believe he just snuck in the door.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The first item before you this evening is a conditional use and variance to allow a 9,880 square foot liquor store on a 3-acre property in the North Point overlay. There's a convenience center with 16 gas pumps are also proposed with the development. However, that use is permitted by right on the property. A variance is requested to reduce the landscape strip along West Side Parkway from 20 feet to 10 feet. And I have the location map on the overhead. The subject property is located at 2125 Hembry Road. This is the northwest corner of Hembry Road and West Side Parkway. Property is currently undeveloped. It's zoned Community Unit Plan, CUP, and it's subject to the Cousins West Side Master Plan, Pod B. That pod allows a liquor store with approval of a conditional use. Surrounding properties are also zoned CUP, except for the property to the west is zoned light industrial. There's an undeveloped property located to the north, 2 office buildings located to the east, public storage and a concrete plant located to the west, and the West Side Villas subdivision is located to the south. The comprehensive land use plan designation of the property is business, manufacturing, warehouse, light industrial, which allows the proposed use. According to the applicant, the variance to reduce the landscape strip along West Side is necessary due to topography of the site. The applicant has shown elevation difference from the street to the rear of the property of approximately 30 feet. The applicant believes the reduced landscape strip would keep the height of the retaining wall down, which is already shown at 10 to 15 feet as called out on the site plan, and that's with the reduced, considering the reduced landscape strip. Of course, if approved, staff is recommending that that retaining wall have a decorative finish and that the wall be terraced with planters in between, similar to a condition that we placed on the Home 2 Suites development that had some pretty large retaining walls facing the street at Webbridge and Morse. The liquor store business is called out in the application as Westside Wine and Spirits. It would be a new business that will focus on high-end liquors and wines. Hours of operation in the application are Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., Friday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Sundays, 12:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. The applicant anticipates approximately 3 employees at this location. Got some street view of the property. This is at the intersection of Morrison or West Side Parkway and Hembry, looking at the corner. So this is the property. It's a view of the property from Hembry, so looking towards the intersection at West Side. And this is a view of the property from West Side Parkway, looking north. This is the applicant's site plan. This is the site plan is this is north. This is the 9,880 square foot liquor store. And this is the convenience center with gas pumps behind. Of course, this, the Cousins West Side Master Plan requires that the gas station configuration to bring the convenience store up to the road with the pumps behind. Of course, the south end of the site, there's no development shown on the south end of the site, and the applicant does not currently have plans for the development of that south side. There was a previous site plan before it was formally submitted as a public hearing that showed car wash on that property. However, car wash was not a permitted use under the zoning. Of course, there's a driveway shown off of Hembry as well as from West Side. This third driveway that's depicted here would not be permitted based on the minimum separation requirements of 300 feet between driveways. The West Side streetscape depicts a 10-foot planter adjacent to the travel lane, then a 12-foot sidewalk, and then, of course, the reduced 10-foot landscape strip that the applicant is requesting. The Hembry streetscape depicts a 6-foot planter with 12-foot sidewalk, and then a 10-foot landscape strip is what is required on the Hembry side. There are 69 parking spaces on the site, which does meet the city's code. As I mentioned, the retaining wall at the rear of the site, that retaining wall is about 15 feet off that rear property line. It is labeled on the site plan to be about 10 to 15 feet in height. The retaining wall also comes closer to Hembry Road in this location here. It's approximately 22 feet off of the travel lanes from the property line along Hembry. That retaining wall is depicted to be 4 feet in height, and the applicant does have a note on the site plan that indicates that that portion of the wall would be faced with brick or decorative stone. And then, of course, the site plan calls out 54% open space. That's mainly because the southern portion of the property is not shown with development currently. Of course, the North Point overlay requires a minimum 15% open space. This development proposal was shown to the public at the April 14th Community Zoning Information Meeting. There were several public comments with concerns over crime, entrance too close to the intersection, why an additional liquor store is needed given the proximity to Reds and Total Wine, proximity to the International Charter School of Atlanta, and what the liquor store would specialize in. Staff has also received several objections from the community, primarily from parents from the International Charter School of Atlanta, although we have received a couple of objections from the Westside Village neighborhood as well. The concerns, there were a variety of concerns in those objections, including crime, traffic, and proximity to the International Charter School. Staff has reviewed the proposal and finds that the conditional use request is not in conflict with the established review criteria. We don't believe that the proposal would have significant impacts on surrounding properties, which are primarily developed with office industrial uses. We did check with the city's public safety department, and they were not aware of any particular issues related to other liquor stores in the city. So specifically, we're looking at Reds as well as Total Wine. Staff reviewed the variance and believed the variance to be in conflict with the established review criteria. We believe the site could be developed with the proposed development mix and accommodating the required 20-foot landscape strip along Westside Parkway. This item was considered at the May 6th Planning Commission meeting. Staff recommended approval of the conditional use and denial of the variance, subject to 13 conditions. At the Planning Commission, there were no public comments. After discussion, Planning Commission did recommend unanimous approval of the conditional use and denial of the variance, subject to the staff's recommended conditions. And so Planning Commission recommended approval subject to the following conditions. 1, liquor store shall be added as a conditional use at 2125 Hembry Road and limited to no more than 9,880 square feet. 2, conditional use approval shall be limited to Westside Wine and Spirits. No additional liquor store use or subleasing shall be permitted within the approved space. 3, liquor store shall be limited to package sales of beer, wine, and liquor. 4, states the hours of operation, which I've previously stated. 5, limits the site plan to the site plan prepared by Contineo Group dated April 29, 2021. 6, Hembry and Westside streetscapes shall be substantially as shown on the submitted site plan with heavy ornamental landscaping between the buildings and sidewalk. The landscape strip along Westside Parkway shall be 20 feet. 7, existing street trees along Westside Parkway shall be saved as depicted on the site plan prepared by Contineo Group dated 4/29/21. And those are the street trees referenced in that condition. Condition 8, property shall be limited to 1 curb cut on Hembry, 1 curb cut on Westside Parkway. 9, buildings shall have an exterior which is primarily brick or stone as approved by Design Review Board. Buildings shall be oriented to the street and shall include a street-facing front door and windows with no glazing. There shall be no blank walls visible from the street. It's important to note, too, that the Cousins West Side Master Plan also has design guidelines which require a traditional Main Street design with the buildings. Condition 10 deals with the retaining walls and requires that retaining walls over 14 feet in height be terraced with minimum 4-foot planters in between. Talks about what those planters would be planted with. It also requires that the retaining walls be faced with decorative masonry or stone masonry product that is compatible with the materials used on the principal buildings. And of course, final approval with DRB. And then, of course, addressing that retaining wall along Hembury Road, requiring that to be faced with brick or stone. Condition 11, a minimum 30% open space shall be provided on the property and shall be improved with hardscape and landscape with final approval by staff. Condition 12, developer shall dedicate a permanent easement across the south end of the property for a pedestrian walking path for future connection to Maxwell. What that condition is, let me go back to the So that condition is talking about providing pedestrian connection across the southern portion of the property here. And then I just wanted to bring the aerial up. The idea would be that of course, we would have to work with the public storage and the concrete plant, but the idea would be to allow for pedestrian access over to Maxwell. We have the dog park that is under construction at this location. Of course, the amphitheater is over in this area as well. In condition number 13, eco-district measures for the proposed development shall include the use of sustainable landscaping and bioretention as approved by staff. And that concludes the presentation. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Councilman Heights.
Mr. Woodman, thank you for the presentation for staff perspective. Can you speak a little bit more to the distance of the curb cut to the right-hand turn coming down Hembury onto Morrison? I don't have distances, I don't think, reflected here, but it looks awfully close.
I don't know the exact distance right offhand. I can do a quick measurement and get back to you on that.
Is there a minimum distance per code from intersection to first curb cut, and does that satisfy that?
I believe that there is, but I don't recall the exact code requirement right offhand. We do have the traffic engineer as well if we need to ask him. Like many people, very familiar with that particular intersection, and you're looking left as you're turning right when you have the green light there, and then you'll be coming right up on whoever's there in front of you. But another question I have is the remaining land, you describe it as being to the south of the property. Yes.
Is it the entire piece of property that's subject to this application? And if so, what, if any, how can that property be used in the future once this application is addressed?
So the way that, so the entire property is part of the item before the public hearing before you this evening. If approved with the conditions as specified in condition number 5, it would limit it to this site plan. So to add additional development on the south end of the property, I would believe that that would represent a substantial change, and they would need to bring that back to City Council.
Would that be your opinion if it was, if there's no ask, if there's no variance, if it was just a development as a matter of right?
I think the way that the condition is currently stated, I do think that even if it was allowed by right within that pod, I think they would need to bring it back to City Council.
Okay. And are you satisfied that the wording ties that down?
I do believe that that wording ties that to this site plan that's before you.
These pedestrian connections to the amphitheater and the dog park, is that being prompted by the applicant or by staff?
Staff.
Can I ask what your thinking is on that? To connect a dog park with kids and dogs to a liquor store?
Well, I mean, I think that there's more than a liquor store at this location. There's a gas station there as well. I think that we are seeing some We have a proposal, for example, that may be coming forward here soon for the property across from Hembry, where they're looking to add some additional residential. So I think by providing those connections throughout the area is a helpful thing, especially to keep down the vehicular trips.
Okay.
That was the thought behind it.
Yeah. Thank you for answering my question.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Mr. Woodman, this is a pretty prominent corner on West Side Parkway. Was a rendering submitted of either the building or the landscape plan?
No.
Was it asked for?
We did have a discussion with the applicant regarding the building, but we didn't really push the issue. We do usually push the issue in the downtown area, but at this site we didn't push the issue. But we did discuss it with the applicant, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Mr. Woodman, I do have a follow-up on the pedestrian connection as well. If I recall, you said that the retention wall back there is going to be between 15 and 24 feet or something like that?
Sure.
So you're anticipating that pedestrian connection being stairs?
Well, there is some elevation change between this property and the properties to the west. The retaining wall actually ends at this location here. So our thought was that, yes, there would be some elevation change, but that elevation isn't near as steep in this location as it is in this area of the site.
Okay.
So it would have to be most likely some kind of stair situation if we were able to do that.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions from council. Thanks, sir. Would the applicant like to come forward at this time?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Juan Del Rio. I'm at 4163 Glen Meadow Drive, Norcross, Georgia, 30092. I am here today representing Westside Wines and Spirits for the special use permit on this property for, of course, the sales of liquors and wine. My client, he's had experience managing multiple liquor stores in Cobb County and South Atlanta with great success because of the clientele he brings, especially due to the products he offers to the customers. As you may have come across this piece of land, I don't know how hard it would be to notice from the street, but there's a tremendous height plane difference from the street frontages towards the back where the plant and the storage facility is located in the back. As Michael mentioned, there's about 30 feet of relief, which makes this piece of land extremely hard to develop, not to start touching on the cost of such a wall and constraints that come with the traffic flow, location of buildings due to the location of the property and regulations. That being said, our client has proposed to improve the street right-of-way along Upper Hembry. As you can see, we're gonna be extending that diesel lane to turn, in this image here, south on West Side, and also extending both the lane to go straight across Upper Hembry and to make a left turn onto West Side. These improvements, of course, are required due to the traffic counts, which was performed, and it was compared with the requirements of the city of Alpharetta. And we got into the conclusion that these were the best 2 points of access due to the traffic that will be generated, also taking into account the existing traffic conditions on this corner. That being said, we've had multiple discussions about the landscape strip along West Side, and we do think that that 10-foot landscape reduction is really not detrimental to this development. So we are actually okay with the staff recommendation about leaving that 20-foot landscape strip along West Side, especially because there's that very wide sidewalk that we'll be putting in, and it gives a little bit more separation between the buildings. I do want to mention that the architectural, these plans will also go in front of the architectural review board to make sure they do comply with the regulations for this area, and that's another 3-month process that we'll have to go through and make sure that we will, of course, comply. This is a very prominent corner of the city that we would like to make sure it represents the architecture and also pedestrian accessibility that the city is trying to push through. With that in mind, I'm open to questions. As I said, we do agree with staff recommendations for the requirements and conditions that are being set forth in the property.
Any questions from council? Councilman Heights?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Del Rio.
Good evening.
Can you talk to the issue of how your proximity to Ameris Bank and the dog park will play a part of your plan for the success of your liquor store?
Not so, I didn't know about the dog park really until I just talked to Michael this afternoon, but this is an area where my client has been studying the potential sales of alcohol and the need for high-end wines and spirits and proximity to a growing population we have in this corner. And, you know, after he made the numbers and consulted with his, I guess, marketing experts, they did agree that this will be a great location. That being said, the use for this corner will, of course, be more oriented on the community with, of course, the use of a convenience store, gas pumps, and entertainment, such as the liquor sales. But we do have a beautification plan in line with the city for a 15-foot wide walk paths and landscape.
And I guess my interest is, you know, in Verizon Amphitheater, or now Ameris Bank, I misspoke. Some habits are hard to break. I'll just call it the amphitheater for right now. Is that a part of your business plan in terms of, you know, potential success?
Not necessarily. That has not been taken into account.
Okay. I was really hoping to speak with the proposed owner of the property.
Mike Mangione, yes, sir. He did call me on my way here and said that he was coming in town from South Atlanta, and he just got way too far back sidetracked. But
it's been represented here in the letter from you that the owner has experience in liquor store management, and I heard that there were multiple liquor stores. Do you know that's the case, or is that just something that you... Because I could only find one liquor store that was owned by this gentleman, and that was the ABC package store down in Buffington Road.
Yes, so that's one of them, and he's building a 15,000 square foot in right off Cherokee County at the moment, and he does have another one that he just sold last year in South Atlanta. But he's still doing the whole logistics behind it, because he builds really the customer base around the product, the attention, security, comfort that he provides to his customers.
Well, as we evaluate this conditional use of this property, and the use is what's important, do you see this use as being comparable to the ABC package liquor store on Buffington Road, or can you speak to that?
I wouldn't be able to speak to that, but based on preliminary plans for the interior of this liquor store, it's gonna be more, even I would say a little bit more upscale than a Total Wines liquor store as far as product comfort inside the store and the whole ambience.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilwoman Richard.
Actually, Mr. Councilmember Hypes covered one of my questions. I was interested to know if the applicant was here this evening, and so he's not, correct? Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? On a similar note, you noted that the store will be distinguished by the products he offers. What products does he offer that Red's or Total Wine doesn't already offer?
Great question. So for example, one of the pluses he has is free delivery to his, he's got an email list or recurring customers that he does free deliveries to over the $100 amount. So he helps with some of those commutes into the property itself. Number two, he does have direct contact with multiple distributors, so he can get product that may not be on the shelf, but people do have tried somewhere else and they would like to get maybe a smaller amount. So that's kind of like something that is not very usual in some liquor stores.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if, Pete, can you please turn off ESPN? I understand. If there is anyone who would like to come forward and speak on this item, now's your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion to deny CU-21-04/V-21-07 Westside Wine and Spirits.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Richard and a second by Councilman Height. And the motion was to deny CU-21-04/V-21-07 Westside Wine and Spirits, Cousins Westside Pod B. Any discussion from council? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to deny the application, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And the motion passes unanimously. Next item up on the public hearing agenda will be CLUP-21-03/Z-21-04/V-2109, and that is Hudson Park. Mr. Woodman, you once again have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The next item before you is a comprehensive land use plan amendment, rezoning, and variance to allow for the construction of 16 for-sale, single-family detached homes and a historic structure to be saved, restored, and used for an office or a residence. And this is on 2.41 acres in the downtown. A comprehensive land use plan amendment is requested from downtown residential density to mixed-use live-work, and a rezoning is requested from R10M HD to downtown live-work for the historic Weatherford House, which is approximately on a property which is approximately 0.14 acres. Rezoning is requested for the balance of the property, which is about 2.3 acres, from R10M HD to downtown residential. Variance is also requested to allow an alley to count toward the minimum lot size of a residential lot. The proposed density of this development is 6.64 units per acre, which does not include the historic property. Have the location map on the overhead. The subject property is located at 0 and 193 Canton Street, which is at the southeast corner of Canton and Mayfield. Property is developed with a single-family detached home known as the historic Weatherford House. The rest of the property is wooded with a stream that divides the property from east to west. I have some street view of the property. This is looking at the property from the intersection of Canton Street and Mayfield. This is a view of the property from Canton Street. This is a view of the historic Weatherford House. This is a view of the property from Mayfield, looking towards the intersection with Canton. And this is a view of the property at the private driveway, which provides access at the rear of the CVS. So this is on Mayfield, looking at that private driveway. CVS would be here. This is the site plan that was approved on this property in 2014. The development at that time was called Stonewalk Mayfield. That development was approved for 20 units, and those units were primarily townhomes, although there were a couple single-family detached homes mixed in. The conditions at that time required that the historic Weatherford House be saved and restored as a residence. With the 2014 approval, the density on that development was 8.3 units per acre, and that density also did not include the historic structure. Surrounding properties are zoned R15 to the north and west, and C1 neighborhood commercial to the south and east. The city owns property located to the north. The historic Teasley Upshaw House is located to the west. CVS is located to the east, and city-owned property and Main Street Commons Office Park are located to the south. The comprehensive land use plan designation of the property is downtown residential density, which allows the proposed single-family detached homes. As I mentioned, there's a variance requested, and that variance is to the definition of a lot. And that variance is to allow a private alley to count toward meeting the minimum lot size on a residential lot. So basically what the applicant is proposing there, some of the parcels, the lots, will go out to the center line of the new alley. And so the alley becomes part of the residential lot. The minimum lot size in the downtown residential zoning district is 4,500 square feet. This applicant's site plan depicts a 20-foot private alley providing access to each lot. The average lot size, including the alley, is 4,814 square feet. When you remove that alley, the average lot size drops to 4,213 square feet. Again, that minimum lot size is 4,500. So it's just below that. Of course, there's been some subdivisions in the downtown that have been granted similar variances to allow an alley to count toward the minimum lot size, and that includes East of Main Phase 2, as well as the 1858 development that was recently approved at the rear of the Alpharetta First United Methodist Church property. Of course, if approved, staff does recommend that the lots not be permitted to vary from the maximum lot coverage. The color site plan up, it's a little bit easier to look at. Of course, the site plan depicts 16 single-family detached lots. Of course, the historic Weatherford House sits in this location here and oriented to Canton Street. All the lots, of course, are oriented to Canton and Mayfield. And then these lots are oriented to the stream that divides the property from east to west. Access to the property is through the new 20-foot alley, as well as through the private drive. The applicant provided a letter, I believe, I can't recall if it was before the Planning Commission or after the Planning Commission meeting, but the current property owner indicated that they had acquired this property, which is the private drive, which provides access to these 4 lots. The lots depicted on the site plan range in size from 4,500 to 6,000 square feet. 10-foot setback is provided along Canton, Mayfield, and the private drive. There is an 8-foot brick sidewalk depicted along Canton Street, and then an 8-foot concrete sidewalk depicted along Mayfield. Each home will have the code-required garage parking as well as the driveway spaces. And that is the 16 homes, with regard to the code-required garage and driveway spaces, the historic Weatherford home is not proposed with parking. We do have a condition to deal with that. In addition, the applicant proposes to construct 15 on-street parallel parking spaces along the east side of Canton Street. So the city owns the long stretch of land just south of this property, and we did coordinate with the Parks and Recreation Director, and the applicant does propose to construct new brick sidewalk, 8-foot brick sidewalk along that stretch, adjacent to 15 on-street parallel parking spaces. Of course, the applicant is hoping to meet any required parking for the historic Weatherford house using those public spaces. The Unified Development Code allows a development to meet its minimum open space requirement through providing a historic save. So they are saving the historic structure on this property, so they automatically meet the minimum open space. However, the applicant is indicating that they intend to provide additional open space on the property. There are amenity walking trails depicted in these areas. And there is an amenity area in this location as well. Not shown on the site plan, but the applicant has acknowledged in their original application, and I double checked with the applicant, they do intend to construct a pedestrian bridge providing connectivity east to west through the development. There are a few specimen trees on the property. There are 2 tree saves called out on the site plan, tree numbers 745 and 746. Both of those trees are within the stream buffer. There are 3 additional specimen trees depicted to be removed. There's a 35-inch poplar, a 25-inch water oak, and a 42-inch poplar. The city arborist recommends a climbing risk assessment be conducted on tree 734. That tree is directly in front of the existing historic Weatherford house, and there's concern by the city arborist that the tree could potentially be hollow. So we do have a condition specifically addressing that particular tree. In addition, tree number 748, which is this tree right here, it's a yellow poplar. In the 2014 tree assessment, the applicant at that time's arborist indicated in the tree assessment that that tree was an excellent specimen quality tree. The current tree assessment from the applicant indicates that it is good condition tree. And it was noted in the 2014 conditions to be saved. In addition, the applicant is depicting underground stormwater within the alley in this location. We also have some conditions that pertain to that as well. The applicant did submit some renderings. It's my actually, I would just want to go back to one thing before we get to the renderings. There is a planned roundabout at this location, Canton Street and Mayfield. It is not a funded project, but we did discuss that with the applicant, and that's why this area at the corner is shown as green. It is called out for dedication to accommodate that future roundabout. This is a plan for that roundabout. Let me got it upside down. Okay, so this would be the applicant's property here. And these are the renderings that were submitted with the initial application. It is my understanding that the applicant may have some changes to these elevations or renderings for you this evening. The initial application indicated that the architecture would be in the Tudor eclectic style as well as the shingle style. The applicant updated the elevations, I believe, just prior to the Planning Commission meeting, and at that time, they submitted a new architectural description. In that description, the renderings, the description called out the architecture as Tudor eclectic and folk Victorian, and the folk Victorian style is the style of the existing historic Weatherford house. The applicant has indicated in the architectural narrative that they intend for those styles to be compatible with the architecture of the historic property, as well as the surrounding homes along Canton Street. Of course, the elevations depict the homes to be 2 stories from the street and those sitting over a basement with gable roofs. Materials shown on the renderings combine brick, stone, shingles, and board and batten. Roof material is called out in the narrative as architectural asphalt shingles, resembling the period-correct shingle associated with each style. Staff provided the applicant with comments based on the primary attributes described for each of the architectural styles in the Unified Development Code. And we do have a condition addressing the renderings that I'll get to in just a few minutes. The applicant's proposal was shown to the public at the April 14th Community Zoning Information Meeting. There was 1 public comment in support of the application. Of course, staff reviewed the applicant's proposal and finds that the comprehensive land use plan amendment, rezoning, and variance are not in conflict with the established criteria. The comprehensive land use plan amendment is consistent with the designation assigned to historic structure saves in the downtown, such as the Ben Manning House and the Lewis Manning House. The zoning proposal is consistent with the vision of the downtown master plan and is suitable as it relates to the use and development of adjacent and nearby properties, which are primarily developed with similar residential uses and densities. In addition, the applicant's proposal represents a decrease in density from the 2014 approval on the property. Of course, approval of the variance should not, we don't believe that the approval of the variance would cause a substantial detriment to the public good. We've had some of those similar type variances approved in the downtown. The item was considered at the May 6th Planning Commission meeting. Staff recommended approval subject to 26 conditions. There was 1 public comment with concerns over using the historic structure for an office and conflicts between traffic and parallel parking along Canton Street. After discussion, Planning Commission recommended approval subject to staff's recommended conditions and accepting certain changes requested by the applicant. And as I go through the conditions, I will note the changes that Planning Commission made. Condition 1 is the site-specific condition tying it to the site plan prepared by Plum Creek Consulting, revised April 26, 21. It also addresses the zoning of the historic Weatherford house as well as the zoning of the balance of the property. Condition 2 would represent a change to the comprehensive land use plan designation of the historic Weatherford house to mixed-use live-work to allow it to be used for an office. 3, single-family lots may include the alley in order to comply with the minimum lot size. Lots shall not be permitted variances to the minimum lot coverage requirement. 4, the historic Weatherford house shall be used for an office or residence. A garage or driveway shall be provided accommodating at least 2 side-by-side parking spaces. The staff condition stated a garage and driveway shall be provided with both accommodating at least 2 side-by-side parking spaces. Condition 5, the historic Weatherford house shall be saved on the property, restored and designated under the city's Historic Preservation Incentive Ordinance. Restoration shall be completed by the 8th certificate of occupancy, so about halfway through the development, subject to a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Preservation Commission. 6 deals with the architecture and materials of the homes and ties it to the staff comments that were provided to the applicant and outlined in the staff report. and subject to compliance with the Alpharetta Downtown Code requirements for those architectural styles. All homes shall have four-sided architecture, materials, and details with a unique front elevation. All homes shall have a chimney. A minimum of 5 homes on Canton Street or Mayfield Road shall be substantially brick or stone. 7, building heights along Canton Street and Mayfield Road shall be limited to no more than 2 stories over basement and 35 feet. 8, lots shall have a front yard defined by a decorative low wall, brick or stone, hedge with columns, brick or stone, or decorative fence as approved by a design review board. Hardscape in front yard shall be limited to decorative brick or pervious pavers and/or stepping stones, and shall not be placed within the required landscape strip except to connect to the sidewalk along the street. Condition 9 specifically deals with the streetscape requirements for Canton Street. Within that condition, we just wanted to make sure bring the roundabout exhibit back up. But we wanted to make sure that when the brick sidewalk is constructed along Canton Street, that it is not brought up to the existing sidewalk, that the brick just follow the future right-of-way line to this point. So that's the additional language, additional sentence in condition 9. Condition 10 specifies the streetscape for Mayfield Road. Condition 11, on-street parallel parking and brick sidewalk on the city's property to the south shall be constructed as depicted on the submitted site plan with final approval by staff. 12, landscape strips along Canton Street and Mayfield Road shall be planted with shade trees as a continuation of what was planted or designed in the downtown and outside utility easements as approved by DRB. 13, project entrance on Canton Street shall include a decorative paver apron, landscaping, and low wall. 14, in lieu of placing public art on the property, the applicant shall transfer to the city at no cost the 3,325 square foot area labeled roundabout right-of-way, which is basically this area and this here, on the submitted site plan, and that is more detailed on the black and white site plan. So this area. Applicant will pay a sum of $12,500 to the city toward the cost of future public art as part of the future roundabout project. That was a condition that was provided by the applicant to staff. Condition 15, amenity areas shall be developed with a park-like setting with decorative landscape, hardscape, low walls, and seating. Amenity walking trails shall include a gravel or slate chip path, seating areas, and landscaping. Landscape shall include plant selections promoting the historic downtown. 16, developer shall construct a pedestrian bridge across the stream connecting the east and west sides of the development. 17, creeping vines shall be planted to cover retaining and low walls as approved by staff. Condition 18, tree recompense shall be paid to the tree fund. A climbing risk assessment with a resistograph or similar testing to determine the health and structural integrity of the tree and main scaffold limbs shall be conducted to determine if tree number 734, which is a 38-inch water oak, should be saved as approved by staff. Developer shall make reasonable efforts to save additional trees of quality and/or tree groupings. Condition number 18 was changed by the Planning Commission. The original condition recommended by staff started out with a sentence that stated the following trees shall be saved. Number 736, which is a 34-inch water oak, and number 748, which is a 41-inch yellow poplar within the stream buffer. That sentence was stricken and replaced with the first sentence in 18 that says tree recompense shall be paid to the tree fund. I will note that tree number 736 at the time of Planning Commission, that tree was not labeled on the applicant's tree survey and assessment. and we were unsure of where that tree was on the property. We have since identified that tree as tree number 75 on the applicant's survey, which is shown to be a dead, dying, or hazardous tree. So that tree should not be saved, tree number 736. However, we do recommend that tree number 748 is saved on the property. That's the yellow poplar. Condition number 19, access from the private drive along the east property line behind CVS shall require an access agreement from the property owner. Again, the current property owner has provided a letter stating that they have acquired the land that has that private driveway. So there is access to these properties by way of this private drive. They have not officially incorporated that land into the application before you this evening. Condition 20, developer shall plant 10-foot landscape strip along the private driveway behind CVS and the 5-foot landscape strip along the south property line to landscape buffer standards as approved by DRB. 21, fences and walls visible from the public right-of-way shall be decorative as approved by DRB. Unfinished wood fences and decks shall not be visible from the street. 22, fire access shall meet IFC 2018 Appendix D and fire hydrants. 23, developer shall remove exotic and invasive species in the stream buffer and revegetate the area as approved by staff. Condition 24, this condition was also amended by the Planning Commission. The condition is currently before you as stormwater management facilities shall not impede access to homes with final approval by staff. Applicant shall work with staff to determine the best solution for providing underground stormwater management. The condition as recommended by staff to the Planning Commission read, stormwater management facilities shall be provided on an independent lot and shall not impede access to homes with final approval by staff. And that was the end of condition number 24. And that specifically had to do with the underground stormwater facilities that are shown within this new private alley. Of course, our stormwater manual requires that stormwater management facilities be on an independent lot for the purpose to make sure that there is no dispute between who has maintenance responsibility over those facilities. Condition 25, garbage pickup shall be from the alley. And condition number 26, no more than 10% of the residential units shall be permitted to be rented as recorded in the HOA's declarations and covenants. And that concludes the presentation. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions from council on this item? Councilman Burnett.
Michael, would you put well, I can do it from here. On Canton Street, you see, you'd condition brick pavers. Talk to me about the rest of that street, because I run down Mayfield Road a lot, and Mayfield Road, I know that that's not brick pavers. But do you have issues with them getting into Canton Street, which may honestly be a Pete question? Do you have a lot of cleanup involved with the brick pavers? No, my question, I think they're beautiful, but I think they can be dangerous. And I understand the ideology of making it closer to downtown because it has a uniform feel, but when you turn left or right, when you turn left, especially on Mayfield Road, it's unbelievably residential. They're older homes. I mean, and it's turning over, but would you talk about your experience with brick pavers on busy roads?
There are maintenance challenges every day for us. We got utility companies going up and down all over the place. They're the biggest challenge we have. There's very little right-of-way to work with, so they put their utility boxes, small cable boxes, flush to grade, but they eventually settle. And then we ask them to repair it, and then they do as good a job as we would like them to do. It becomes a challenge. There's no doubt about it. we're up to the challenge if this is where we want to go, but it is a challenge.
Does the maintenance on that sidewalk after the development is CO'd and built out, does that belong to the HOA or does that belong to the city?
Is that in the right of way?
It's in the right of way.
It's the city then.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Michael, my next question is, with condition number 6, it says, the minimum of 5 homes on Canton Street in Mayfield shall be substantially brick or stone. Can you define what substantially means in the case of something subjective, like what's subjective to me may not be, what may be subjectively brick or stone to the pro tem may be significantly under my standards for brick and stone.
The intent of the condition would be that the majority or more than 50% of that particular elevation would be brick or stone.
Okay, thank you.
That was the intent.
Any other questions from council on this item? Councilman Merkel?
Let's go back to the brick pavers, if you don't mind, Michael. If they put these in, coming down Canton Street, are they just going to butt up to a concrete sidewalk that's already there?
Are you talking about on the existing property, or there is an existing sidewalk along the frontage of this property that would be removed in place?
And then what's it going to connect to right there at the bottom of your page?
So the bottom of the page is the city-owned property, and that's where the development, where the applicant is proposing to develop the frontage of this property with the brick sidewalk and then the 15 on-street parallel parking spaces. We recommended brick because it would be a continuation of what is occurring to the south.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
So it'll butt up to other brick that's not going straight to concrete.
It is brick to the south, yes.
Any other questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
Okay, can you go into, the underground detention under the alley? So is it not just a matter of putting it in the conditions that that's the responsibility of the future HOA, or how do you propose dealing with that so that a buyer understands that if that has to be removed or whatever, and perhaps that's an engineering question for Mr. Owens, but would you like
the applicant did provide a requested change to condition number 24, and we did hand that requested change out to all of council. And I do believe that language does address our concern. So the reason why we want that stormwater facility on its own separate lot is because we've experienced in the past some issues with whose responsibility is for maintenance. And so that's why the stormwater manual asks for that type of facility to be on its own lot. We do have reviewed the applicant's request to change condition number 24, and we do believe, I've talked to our traffic engineer, and he does believe that does address future maintenance the way that is written, and would be acceptable language addressing that.
Okay, and one other question. Is there a site plan that's been submitted for the addition or the inclusion of tree 748, the 42-inch poplar, 75-foot tall tree?
No, we have not seen a site plan that saves that tree.
Have you asked for it?
The city arborist has told me that he has talked to the applicant and requested an alternate site plan to show that tree being saved.
But you've not received one?
We have not received.
Okay,
no.
Thank you.
Councilman Binder?
I was trying to find in the packet, is there a comparison of pervious, impervious balance from what was approved to what's being recommended today?
I typically do look at that when I'm comparing a site that's been approved previously by council. That information was not available in the 2014 plan, so I really couldn't compare apples to apples, so I did not include a comparison.
That's fair. So when we're looking at applications, we look at the past, but then we also say, okay, what does it open up for future? So based on what you said, it sounded like, well, we can work with what was proposed for condition number 24, with the stormwater management and underground wording and all that. How is it, if we approve something like that or similar to that condition, what are we opening up for the future? Is that something we want to get into, the business of underground detention being under neighborhoods? Because we deal with it all the time, where 5-10 years from now, got a homeowner, future resident saying, I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so I'm just, have you thought of that, or alleviate concerns on my part for that?
Certainly, and I'm not the stormwater expert. We do have Eric Graves here to answer any questions with regard to stormwater, but what I will tell you is we have approved some underground stormwater facilities, especially in the downtown. Land is limited. Usually the properties are smaller, so we do get more requests for that, especially in the downtown. This application is definitely is a little bit more unique, because the applicant is also requesting that variance to allow the alleys to be within the lots. And then, of course, the alley has the underground detention facilities. So that means that you've got underground facilities within these residential lots. So that is a little bit different than what council has done in the past. But I do know that our staff has looked at the applicant's request to that change to condition 24, and we have reviewed it, and we feel like it would address the maintenance responsibility in that case.
So are you good with future applications asking for the same thing? Like, I guess, are you saying you can live with the condition, or you like the condition and this sets?
Again, I'm probably not the best one to say if I can live with it. I definitely think that by approving it
Micah, it looks like you got somebody coming
Yeah, phone
down.
a friend, man.
Phone a friend. It's not our preference to have it underground or in residential neighborhoods, because there is more costly maintenance, and out of sight, out of mind, could lead to worse problems if we're not taking regular care of the system. In our current processes, we do require a maintenance agreement with all of the developments, so they have a maintenance schedule and an understanding of what that maintenance entails for all of their stormwater management facilities in the neighborhood. And we are working with a Public Works group to try to, maybe work towards getting a system in place where each neighborhood could, submit their scheduled inspection, and just, to help ensure that, they're being maintained and stormwater is being looked at on it and kept up. Once again, not the best location. I mean, if this particular system had to be totally pulled up and rebuilt, several of these homes would have only pedestrian access to them during that period of construction, and that would be pretty inconvenient to those future residents.
So, and as far as the homes or the neighborhoods that have the underground detention, putting them on maintenance schedule, how many years removed are we from that? Like, I guess my question is, how is the process doing to make sure we're on top of it? Because it seems like an admin, not nightmare, but somewhere along that lines.
We do have better tools now that allow some automated reporting and in our systems. So it's a matter of building that into our current systems that we have already. Our CityWorks system, we can make a portal for them to upload their reports, and it can be easier to track that maintenance is occurring, or at least those inspections are occurring, and it would give us one more lever to say that yes, our homeowners are doing what they're supposed to be doing,
And is that currently in place, and you feel good about it? Like, if we look at it and, yep, we're on top of it, because it's only going to be more.
I think we're at a good place to get to the point where we're implementing that.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Thank you.
Councilman Hypes.
Well, Eric, don't go too far. I was going to save some of this language for the applicant, but maybe if I address the language early, some language I might propose that would give the applicant some opportunity to think about it. But there's really two issues as I understand it. One is access, and it can be for inspection, repair, maintenance, et cetera.
Correct.
And the other is who's going to pay for it.
Correct.
And just to get it out there and clear, the who's going to pay for it, the UDC says at 3.3.3D2 that for a subdivision, it's a pro rata, it gets written into the covenants, that's a requirement by the city for a stormwater facility. Those homeowners will be written into the covenants per the UDC, and they will share the cost of maintenance per our code. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if we did nothing, this would get written into the covenants per the code, and that's how it gets paid for if there's maintenance and repair.
Correct.
The access is a different story because we're going on to private property. So if an easement is recorded that grants access, inspection, maintenance, and repair rights to both the city and to the HOA, then no matter whose private property it's on, either the city or the HOA privately, as collectively, I should say, has a right per the easement. Just like when the cable company comes and rips up my front yard, and they say we're going to put cable down the front of your front yard. Back when I had a yard. But there's, it's a utility easement. So private property or not, we can ask the applicant and hope that they would agree that we can have a condition for easement which talks about who has rights of access granted to the HOA and the city. So now we've addressed access and who's going to pay for it.
Yes.
Any other questions from council? Michael, I think you can answer my question.
Keep my fingers crossed.
I was just curious, when you're in the conditions asking for the connection across the creek, is that a public connection? Or is it intended to be a public connection?
It's my understanding that the applicant intends for that pedestrian bridge to be for just the residents of this development. We did ask, but I would encourage you to also ask that question of the applicant just to verify that. I do believe that we asked the applicant about whether these walkways, the walking paths through the development would be open to the public, and I'm almost 100% that the applicant indicated that it's amenity space for the residents only, not for the public.
Okay, so was that condition requested by the applicant, or was that?
The condition about the pedestrian bridge?
Right.
It was in the 2014 conditions, so it was a carryover. So we had
required. Was it intentionally put in there for a public connection?
The 2014 was not specific to a public connection. It was for the development. But the reason why we conditioned it is because they showed all their open space or amenity space for that 2014 development on one side of the stream. Right. And so that the units on the other side of the stream wouldn't get access without that.
Okay.
Walking
and that makes sense. I'm just trying to understand if it's in the public's interest to condition something internal like that, or whether it should be up to the developer. And from my perspective, if it's just because it was that way before, because it was a different site plan and there was an amenity space on the other side of the creek, I'm just curious if staff has any opinion of whether that's something that's really publicly necessary, or if that's something that the applicant could determine for themselves.
Understood. Yeah, we did discuss that. We discussed how the layout with the 2014 plan with the applicant, and we did feel that it was necessary to still provide that pedestrian bridge to connect both sides of the development. We thought that this would be a nice kind of cut through for a pedestrian instead of having to come all the way up to the corner and over. So that's why we discussed it with this connection here. But I know, opening up public walking paths through a residential development is a pretty big ask of a residential development, although we do find that in the downtown, so certainly could
Well, that's why I asked.
discuss.
I mean, I'm just speaking for me, and that's why I was trying to clarify this.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, I don't know that it's in the public's interest to require a bridge if it's just for the internal owners of the properties in there.
Understood.
If it's going to be open to the public, I certainly understand
Yeah.
why, but otherwise, I'm not sure that I'm really vested in that one. Any other questions from council? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Would the applicant like to come forward?
Good evening, how are you? My name is Ken Warlick on behalf of Harrison Homes, 12892 Waterside Drive, Alpharetta. Also here on behalf of the owners as well of the property at the corner of Mayfield and Canton. Tonight I want to present to you Hudson Park, Alpharetta's newest high-end luxury single-family detached residential community located in the heart of downtown Alpharetta. We respectfully request your approval to rezone the corner of Mayfield and Canton Street to DTR and DTLW for the construction of 16 detached, single-family, high-end luxury homes. So first I'll tell you, you guys, sounds like you intimately know this project, so I'm going to talk to you about who Harrison Homes is. So we're a high-end custom builder, do custom in-town and communities as well. We specialize in boutique and niche development in kind of highly desirable locations, hence is why we're looking for Alpharetta. Downtown city centers, walkable, luxury kind of products is where we want to do, or where we want to be. We're known for quality high-end homes. We're very relevant construction industry presence and brand as well. So the areas we're in are Brookhaven, Buckhead, Chamblee, Sandy Springs, Decatur, City of Atlanta, Roswell, Milton, and now Alpharetta. So Harrison Homes is similar to downtown Alpharetta. It's just we're relatively small, but we're kind of a big deal. We have our esteemed team here tonight that's going to help present our vision for the community and how we believe this will be a great addition to the downtown area of the city of Alpharetta. So I'm going to introduce David Versel, who's going to kind of get into some details of the project, then I'll step back up to go over the architecturals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is David Versel. I'm a development consultant. I live here in downtown Alpharetta at 350 Oak Terrace. And want to talk a bit about the project and the kind of how everything came together and address some of the issues that you've all brought up in your questions to staff. So as we all know, it's 16 new single-family homes at an important corner at the northern gateway to downtown Alpharetta. More importantly than that, this is really the last undeveloped site in the Canton Street corridor. If you go up from downtown, as was mentioned, the brick sidewalk ends in front of the new homes to the south of the city-owned site. This is the last site up before you get to Mayfield Road. So it really is a key piece in completing the city's vision for downtown Alpharetta, especially in the Canton Street corridor. As discussed, we are proposing to restore the historic Weatherford House, which we don't know precisely how long it's been vacant, but by talking to neighbors and others who've been around the area, we understand it's been vacant for no less than 15 years, probably more. The house is deteriorating. There are some issues with it. Nevertheless, it is Harrison's intent to restore the home. The reason that we're coming in with a request for DTLW for that home rather than having the whole project be DTR is we're just not certain that we'll be able to get the home back up to the level of quality needed to market it as a luxury home. There's a lot in that house that needs to be dealt with, a lot that needs to be saved. It's not that large of a home, and we think it could be a nice space for an office or a small-scale commercial use. So we want to retain that flexibility because we just want to make sure the market can sustain it. As discussed, we are proposing significant improvements to the public environment around the site, the brick sidewalks, the street plantings, the dedication of the right-of-way for the future roundabout, the improvement of the city property to the south, adding more on-street parking spaces, not just to serve this property, but to support downtown Alpharetta and to complete that sidewalk all the way from the commercial heart of downtown and Milton Avenue all the way up through Mayfield Road. Also proposing to improve that private roadway to the east, which, as has been discussed, the current owner has acquired that site, and that will be part of this development. That roadway, if you're familiar with it, that runs behind CVS and the gas station and goes to the Main Street Commons Office Park, has not been well maintained by the prior owner. It's in a pretty good state of disrepair. I go walking there myself. It's not really a safe place to walk when people come whipping around that corner, and we're intending to fix all of those problems with it. And then also adding the community amenities internal to the project. Now, just to clarify, the proposed walking paths and footbridge are intended for private use of the homeowners and residents of Hudson Park. We were okay with the footbridge condition because if you take a look at the site plan, if we go to the next one, thank you. Well, we'll get back to it, but if you look at the site plan, the amenity area is on the east side of the creek, and in order for the owners on the west side of the creek to access it, they'll need to cross the creek, so we thought it would be a good thing to have just for that reason. In terms of the public-private issue, I think a good way to think about it is if you think about the path that goes around the retention pond at Boise. It is, my understanding, privately owned, but there's no restrictions keeping the public off of it. And I actually take my 6-year-old riding her bike on it because it's a flat area that's in a circle. And so, you know, it is used by people in the public. No one's told me not to use it. And I guess by custom, it's being thought of as a public space, even though it's a private space. So we would not intend to gate that space, but it would not be expressly advertised as being open to the public, kind of somewhere in that gray area, if that makes sense. All right, could we go back to the existing conditions, please? Thank you. So this is what the site looks like today. You've got the existing home on the site. As you see, the topography of the site kind of slopes down from Canton Street and Mayfield Road to the creek at the center of the site, and that'll become important when we talk about architecture. We are, again, looking to improve a long-neglected site that has not been used in any meaningful way in many years. We're aware that it used to be a farm. The Weatherford family had a farm on the site, which I learned in our site research. They were famous for owning a 2-headed cow, so just thought that was interesting. But that was a long time ago, and it hasn't been used in that purpose. Most of the trees that have grown up on that site over time were since it stopped being used as a farm. You know, this is not an old-growth forest. This is not something that really contributes much to the character of downtown in its present state. And I think that becomes important when we talk about our plan for dealing with the existing trees on the site. Next slide, please. Okay, so in addressing the site plan, just want to say for the record that Harrison is fully in support of the conditions as presented by the Planning Commission. Just want to make a couple of notes on that. First and foremost, the tree located in front of the existing home, tree number 734, it was found by our tree consultant to be in dead, dying, or hazardous condition, first off. Second off, even if it were not, and we were to try to preserve it, the critical root zone would impede the sidewalk. So we would not be able to put in that 8-foot wide brick sidewalk and preserve that tree, even if the tree were in usable condition. And, you know, our thought is, regardless of that, we don't see a need to have that tree studied further because it would be in the way of the sidewalk and we would be planting new street trees along Canton Street. Another thing I'd like to call out in reference to the access issue for stormwater is if you take the alley off of Canton Street to where it dead ends, there's a little shaded triangular area right where the alley ends into the stream buffer by the driveway for Lot 8. That triangular area would be used as an access point for the underground stormwater facilities. So that would be owned by the HOA. It would not be part of any of the individual lots on the site, and it would be used as a point of access that is commonly owned by the entire HOA. So Councilor Hypes brought up the point that if you have easements, then that should take care of it. We would agree with that, and we would further stress that having this area as well gives a common point of access to that underground facility that's not on one individual's property. Now, the one issue that I feel we still need to address is the staff recommendation regarding tree number 748, which I don't know if I can't do anything here. Okay, so it's right on the lot line between lots 15 and 16 on the east side of the stream, where you see that X. Does everybody see where that is? Keep going. Nope. Nope, wrong one. 15 and 16, east side of the stream. In the stream buffer. Right on the edge of the stream buffer. To the right. That's it. You got it.
Bingo.
X marks the spot. Okay, so we have located that. Now, that tree, if we can, Michael, would you be able to bring up the 2014 site plan on the overhead? So I bring this up with the 2014 plan because it was in fact a condition of approval by council at that point to save that tree. I do, however, want to point out that in that 2014 plan, that tree was not shown in the correct location. So you can see where, right there. Right, so that tree was shown some distance to the southwest of where it really is, according to our current tree survey, which this comes up to the point of why we did not provide an alternative site plan. Now, the reason being was this 2014 plan as approved, which as stated was primarily townhomes with some single family. We believe that suffices as an alternative site plan. That's what was approved in 2014. That's what Harrison could have come in and developed as of right, but they made the decision that it was not in their interest, nor was it in the city of Alpharetta's interest to go forward with that plan. We recognize there's been a number of new developments in downtown that's added a lot of townhouse units to the area and really saw an opportunity to provide a high-quality, single-family detached neighborhood that's kind of a transition from the more dense areas at the center of downtown to the residential areas that are to the north of Mayfield and to the west along Mayfield. So we see that as the alternative plan would be to develop townhouses here or some mix of single-family and townhouses. From a practical matter, if you look at the location, the actual location of tree number 748 as it's shown on our site plan and where the critical root zone is of that tree, if we were to save that tree, that would render lots 15 and 16 completely undevelopable. There just wouldn't be enough land area left on those lots to build homes on them. You all know how expensive Alpharetta has gotten, both for land and for housing. Ken will address this when he comes back up and talks about the architecture, but we are looking at very high-end luxury homes here. Even so, just looking at the cost of land, the cost of acquiring it, the cost of developing it, the cost of building houses at this time, if we were to lose those two lots from this plan, the project doesn't work. So we would have to pretty much withdraw the application, pull the contract to acquire the site, and go back to the drawing board. Now, again, that's sort of the question here to council is, you're looking at this development, obviously, you know, we see that this fits the vision the city has laid out and been implementing for many years for your downtown. Staff endorsed that, the Planning Commission endorsed that, and we're requesting that the council endorses that view and allows the removal of that tree. So I will stop there and hand it back to Ken. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Just well put. All right, so I want to discuss the architectural of this project. We started the design concepts. You can go to the next slide. So kind of what we saw and what we originally submitted was more of just a Tudor eclectic, met with staff and council, really kind of started to hone in our design and bring in the folk Victorian styles also, which more represented the Weatherford house that was existing on site. So what we feel is that our proposed architectural designs are kind of derived from both Tudor eclectic and also the folk Victorian styles, and then also meet the Alpharetta downtown code. So and we feel like these are compatible with the Weatherford home. So next slide, please. So our goal is to stand out but not stand alone. We wanted to create different and unique exterior elevations that were compatible with multiple floor plans and not just the same house over and over and over again. We're not a tract builder, we're a custom builder. These are custom homes, custom interiors, custom exteriors. And so we're working with the city, we modified and incorporated from the city and tied those, both the Weatherford homes and then also our initial design concepts together. And then that's where it kind of came to, next slide please, is kind of what we had submitted originally. And we wanted to detail that out as much. And so with the 50% of the homes face, or the 50%, which is substantial materials, is we felt like we captured that. Our design team started working on it with the in exterior concepts and developed a color palette and theme that both captured the era of the architectural style, including the Weatherford home, but then also added some flair and details. It's kind of what designers do. But these prominent materials and classic and timeless designs and colors will blend this project with the vibrant look and feel of the rest of downtown Alpharetta. Also, as David mentioned out too, we feel like this will be a great kind of transition from the higher density, in town, and then transitioning into the residential portion of Alpharetta. So the next slide, please. Boom, Hudson Park. So this is where we are now. The homes are narrow and asymmetrical with some prominent features, front-facing gables, arches, front porches, wood accents, materials such as stone, brick, board, and batten. And all of these design and conceptual renderings and historical resemblances come together to create what we feel is something the city of Alpharetta should be proud of. We're proud of it, and proud to include in the downtown district. So after all the hard work and collaborative effort with the Harrison team, city, and staff, we're pleased to announce Hudson Park. These unique designs and color palettes are both welcoming and warming, and will offer a revived appearance for the corner of Mayfield and Canton Street that has sat derelict for some time. So next slide is, if we could go to the next slide, I'm going to introduce Chris Owens. Chris Owens is a lot smarter than I am and can go into the stormwater, which I believe has become an issue of contention for this project. So I'm going to hand it over to Chris and let him discuss.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. Thank you very much for having us tonight. My name is Chris Owens. My address is 7425 Mid-Broadwell Trace in Alpharetta, Georgia. I'm the civil engineer for the project, working with Harrison Homes. Mr. Hypes, you made a comment earlier that I'd like to focus on rather than the technical aspects of this system, which we have discussed with staff, and it's not an unusual system here in Alpharetta or in the downtown area. However, taking input on that topic, Mr. Hypes, we are suggesting a rewording of condition number 24. I believe Michael has provided a copy of that at your seats, but I would like to read that in the record as a request from the applicant. Is rather than the Planning Commission recommended condition, I believe this more wholly addresses the staff and council's concerns that have been expressed thus far. That condition would read, stormwater management facilities may be placed underground within the proposed private alley with final approval by staff. Easements shall be indicated on the recorded plat, clearly describing the underground facilities, their function, purpose, ownership, and outlining that maintenance responsibility lies with the HOA. These easements and maintenance responsibilities shall also be included in the recorded covenants. As Mr. Hypes clarified with Mr. Graves, that is a requirement of code in the UDC today. However, just out of an abundance of communication and caution, we don't mind placing that on the plat very clearly and also making sure it has its own section in the covenants. So we have no issue with that. And Mr. Hypes, if you'd like to insert the word access and clarify that the city and the HOA have that in that condition, we'd be comfortable with that.
At the appropriate time, when we get to that, I have a little additional language that I think is consistent with what you're saying.
Fair enough. And the only other item I'd like to address, really, which pertains to site planning and stormwater as well, is that tree of contention, that yellow poplar. I've heard discussion on both sides of whether to condition keeping it versus allowing it to have recompense for it. If the council decides to condition keeping that tree, I would like to ask consideration that it be specified that Harrison could work with staff to encroach in that critical root zone up to 20%. That is allowed by code. However, if that flexibility were, if you could see that flexibility into the conditions, it might help Harrison adjust those lot layouts on the east side of the creek such that it's not as big of an impact as it appears to be on the current site plan. So it's just food for thought on that item, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have about that or stormwater. Thank you very much.
Councilman Merkel.
Yeah, Mr. Owens. And as we do these backfills, as I call them, these smaller pieces of real estate that are left over to develop, we are seeing underground detention as being more viable. If this were to be above ground as traditionally done in the city, how much space would that take up?
It would take up 2 lots.
So by giving you permission to put underground, you pick up 2 lots, in theory?
Approximately, in theory,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Councilman Hipes.
The as promised suggested language, Mr. Owens, I think you had read something, and if you want, and I believe council members have your proposed language up here, and what I was going to propose on the 4th line down after the word ownership to insert a comma and strike out the word and then after HOA on the next line to insert the following, which would be, and granting access, inspection, maintenance, and repair rights to the HOA and City of Alpharetta, period. And then at the end of the last sentence, after the word covenants, to add with all costs to be borne by the HOA and Hudson Park homeowners. Now, I understand that last addition is belts and suspenders on top of what the code provides, but the other part is a little bit additional. If the HOA fails to act, or if the city does need to enter onto private property for any reason, the private property owner has already agreed in advance with the easement language. So if that's acceptable to you, I would propose that language.
Yeah, we have no objection to that. Thank you, Mr. Hipes.
Well, I still have the microphone from the mayor. Is there, just to clean things up, is there any proposal to record an easement for the private drive, just so everybody's real clear who the owner is, and yet the office park and CVS have rights of use because that's the only curb cut that's available?
Yes, sir. There is intent to clear that up between Harrison and the seller prior to closing and platting. So we could address that, provide that document to the city at the time of LDP if that's...
I think it would just benefit everybody, make us a happier city.
Yes, sir, I agree.
All right, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Mr. Owens, okay, someone had mentioned the corner area closest to Mayfield Road as access, common access to the stormwater. It's got the triangular-like feature.
Mr. Mitchell, I believe the reference is at the end of the alley on the east end. There's a dark triangle there.
Okay.
The intent of that would be to place a manhole there for maintenance and cleaning access so that someone would not have to enter onto a private lot.
So you're comfortable that all the way down to the street, to Canton Street, that could be cleaned or whatever maintenance needed to be done could be done through that manhole?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions from council on the applicant's behalf? Thank you, gentlemen. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if there's anyone here that would like to come forward, now's your opportunity to do so.
I'm sorry, I always forget to fill out the public comment card.
That's quite all right, sir. That's why we ask, even though there haven't been cards turned in, please just state your name and your address for the public record.
My name is Nat Lewis Jr. My address is 12762 Waterside Drive in Milton. I grew up right across the street from Hudson Park. My parents still live there, and if I have my way, that house will be there at 184 for another 50 years. We made it a point to be sure and sell the property next door to that to somebody that was not going to develop it. We didn't want townhomes next to our house, you know, when we are living there forever. I'm really glad Harrison developers are here. I think the Lewis family is in general very much in support of this project. We're in support of a lot of things about it. Cutting down the density is paramount. That makes us very happy. Sustaining that greenway and that creek, and I think that is a all-season creek right there. It's not like a drainage ditch or anything. It's an active creek. I'm so glad that they are going to renovate, refurbish, hopefully to as close to the original condition what'd you call the house? The Weatherford House. We always called it the Wills House. Ms. Wills lived there for a long time, and a number of my friends rented the house. So we do remember when it was lived in. I know it has, it's taken a lot of time. The weather and time has not done it any favors. I'm so glad that they're here and that they're going to get that old house back to the way it should be. I guess I have a couple of concerns and questions. In general, we are in support. We have a little bit of concern about the traffic, but I mean, it is downtown Alpharetta. You're going to have traffic. The 15 parking spaces, I guess it's 15 parking spaces up along that strip, the parallel parking spaces. That'll be cut in to that lot substantially, and there's a big drop right there that goes down to the creek. I'm wondering, as that creek meanders south past that lot that the city owns, what will be the transition from that greenway? You know, and I know that you said that the trails that they're setting up they'll be intended for private use, but there won't be any signs restricting public use. I will guarantee you, if that area is as nice as it can be, with the new growth on that creek and a nice walkway up that creek and green space, I will guarantee you that the public will want to use it as a cut through. I mean, it's a nice walking area already. They're going to walk through there. So I'm wondering what's going to be done with the part of the creek that the city owns. You know, it's unusable property for anything else, but you know, if you could extend that walking trail up to the parallel parking spots and beautify that strip, and extend that walking trail on either or just one side of that creek, because the public's going to use it anyway. But I'm just wondering, with the elevation of that drive going down into Hudson Park, what's going to be the transition from city-owned property to the privately owned property? And then the only other thing is the beautification of, you know, what's going to be done with the spill into that creek there. Where's the bridge going to go? You know, they're going to be walking, the trail goes on either side of the creek. The trail goes in between two homes there. You know, that kind of bothers me a little bit too, but really the main thing that we're concerned about is, number one, how is the Weatherford House going to be done? I mean, is it going to be, I guess I heard it was going to be supposedly completed by the 8th CO in there. Is that what it is? Completed by the, so that's good. You know, that's really good. So I like that. I'm not sure about the one or two trees that are in front of the Weatherford. I'm not convinced that they couldn't stay and still have that brick sidewalk. I'm not convinced personally. I hadn't got out there and measured it or anything. But I do want to keep as many trees as possible. I know Alpharetta wants the same thing. I'm totally confident that Alpharetta will do whatever they can to keep all the trees they possibly can. So I'm not worried about that. So that's really it. It's just making sure the Weatherford is renovated up to snuff, keeping as many trees as we can. I understand the price of land is outrageous. I understand that you got to break some eggs to make an omelet.
Just to let you know, we generally try to keep public comment to about 3 minutes.
I know, I'm overdue. Okay, that's it. Trees, Weatherford House, and the trail. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Woodman, do you have any ideas of how to respond to his questions about the connections and the future use of those adjacent properties?
Admittedly, I didn't catch everything that was stated with regard to, I did hear a question about a transition between the private property to the city property. The city doesn't, so the city owns the property just to the south, but it's literally a 50-foot wide swath of land along Canton Street. And the stream is actually not the city's land. It's on an adjacent private property. So I'm not sure about I'm not sure exactly how to best answer the question about the transition.
I think that explains that the city doesn't own all of that property adjacent to there.
Yes.
And so we really don't have any plans for that connection at this time, but
Correct.
certainly be working with the developer and the adjacent property owners at some point to make it consistent. Thanks, sir.
You're welcome.
If there's anyone else that would like to come and make a public comment on this item, now's your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Mr. Mayor, can I ask staff to address another question?
Councilwoman Richard.
Thank you. Michael, the comments made by the applicant in regards to tree number 734.
Yes.
Can you speak to that? I think I understood that saving that tree would not be possible given the sidewalk, 8-foot sidewalk there.
Yes. So again, 734 is the tree that's right in front of the Weatherford home. I know the city arborist has worked with many developers. We typically have existing trees that are saved along the road frontage of a site. And of course, there's always usually sidewalk installation. So there are methods that the city arborist would use or prescribe to a developer for installation of a sidewalk in that situation, which would limit impacts of the critical root zone of the tree. So there are methods that will allow for the installation of this sidewalk here without negatively impacting the tree.
So just to be clear, if the assessment is done on that tree, because right now there's a question as to whether or not it's hollow or not, but if the assessment is done according to our arborist recommendation, there is a way for that tree to be saved as well as be able to work around from a sidewalk perspective. There's flexibility there.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, I believe you had a question as well.
Thank you. Mr. Woodman, the new elevations that were presented tonight, was that presented to our downtown architect?
The new elevations were not.
So they would need to go back and be reviewed by the architect. I think they're better. But they would need to be reviewed by the downtown architect, right?
Typically, any public hearing in the downtown gets reviewed by the downtown architect. We've had a downtown consultant. We've had a change in the consultant recently, but those new elevations were not presented to our downtown consultant.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay, thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
Now, if we have no other questions from council, I'll call for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I know this may be out of order, but could we offer some response to the comment Ms. Richard asked Michael about regarding that tree?
I have no objection. Does anyone object?
Just like to provide
Please
complete
do.
information.
I just want to make sure nobody had.
I do agree with what Michael said about alternative sidewalk construction methods. However, our landscape architect and the city arborist have been out to the site to look at that tree and agree that it is not structurally sound. The city arborist did say that if we wish to save it, he would require that list of testing that he spoke of. However, I don't believe there's any question about whether or not that tree is in front of the house is savable. It's not a matter of desire. It's a matter of it just, we could do everything we could to work around it, and it's already on its way down.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Did you have another question for staff?
Michael, yeah, I'm sorry to ask you to come back up again. Actually, I took a site visit with the arborist, and that was not my understanding of the city arborist judgment on that tree. My understanding was that he felt that a test needed to be done in order to confirm for certain.
That is also my understanding.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. The only other thing that I would say is I did speak to the city arborist about that tree extensively. He did have questions about the health. He was definitely thought that there could potentially be some defects with the tree, but he wouldn't know that unless the resistograph was done in the climbing assessment.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? I don't think I've ever called for a motion for 3 times.
Sorry.
If we have no other questions from council at this time, I'll go ahead and call for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I will offer motion to approve CLUP-21-03/Z-21-04/V-21-09, subject to the conditions 1 through 17 as reviewed by Mr. Woodman. I will offer a change to condition number 18. And my suggested language here is tree number 748, 41 yellow poplar within the stream buffer shall be saved. Encroachment into the critical root zone shall be limited to no more than 20%, which shall include a tree care plan as approved by the city's arborist. And then the remainder of that condition will remain the same. Tree recompense shall be paid to the tree fund, a climbing risk assessment with a resistograph or similar testing to determine the health and structural integrity of the tree and main scaffold limbs shall be conducted to determine if tree number 734, 38-inch water oak should be saved as approved by staff. Developers shall make reasonable efforts to save additional trees of quality and/or tree groupings. And then my other recommended change is to condition number 24. Stormwater management facilities may be placed underground within the proposed private alley with final approval by staff. Easements shall be indicated on the recorded plat, clearly describing the underground facilities, their function, purpose, ownership, and granting access, inspection, maintenance, and repair rights to the HOA and the city of Alpharetta. These easements and maintenance responsibilities shall also be included in the recorded covenants with all costs to be borne by the HOA and homeowners of Hudson Park. And that is the end of my motion.
Second. We have a motion by Councilman Richard and a second by Councilman Binder. And that was to approve CLUP-21-03/Z-21-04/V-21-09 Hudson Park with the conditions as read by Councilwoman Richard. Is there any discussion? Councilman Hypes.
Well, I would just like to say that I think it's a beautiful project, and I think it's an extremely key project where it's located. Canton Street is one of a kind in our city. The tree canopy in Canton Street is why it's got the secondary name, the Garden District. And it's that location as an entryway into downtown on that corner. I think the homes are beautiful. I really love and appreciate the creativity with what you're doing. And I think the trees are essential as part of it. What makes that a special property to pick out to build your project is because the trees are there and the trees are surrounding it. And as development moves up lot by lot up Canton Street, I, for one, will fight to save every tree going up Canton Street that I can. So that's just my position on that. It wasn't lost on me on your renderings with the elevations, those beautiful homes. Peeking over the roof was a whole line of trees that actually probably won't be there once those houses are built, because a lot of those trees will be lost. But I think it's a beautiful project. It's a great location, and if it does pass, I wish you all the success.
Councilman Merkel.
Yeah, I would mimic so much what Councilman Hipes just said, and I think you understand Alpharetta has become an amazing place, as you keep mentioning up here, because of the standards. And if we just, there's other municipalities, we just come in and knock it all down, build it, and we'll regrow it. Doesn't work. And as he said, that tree canopy down there makes it special. I walk it all the time too. My wife and I come down there. So I know that area, I know that back alley, I know that office complex, condo behind it. It's going to be a beautiful project. And I think allowing the underground water retention, you know, that's a two-lot give back. And there's a little give and take. So I feel like we are giving something out. We don't do a lot of them, haven't historically. And then in turn, we're just asking for some help with the tree canopy. So I fully support that.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
I too, I had some issues with some of the earlier renderings that I didn't think they mimicked the surrounding architecture. The Lewis house next door that has a front porch, the Rutherford house has it, but the ones you presented tonight, at least one of them does have a front porch and the others have a canopy-like, and they look much more in keeping with the historic styles than the previous ones. So I can support this tonight. I appreciate you all saving the Rutherford house. I think our entire community, or most of our community, appreciates having these homes restored, and it just adds so much character when we keep our history as a part of our city. So thank you all for being willing to do that and all your efforts.
Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To echo the sentiments to save historic properties, you know, something that I've come to really appreciate, that, you know, good developers value doing that as well. And so I appreciate the fact that you guys were willing to come out here and do this. You know, I hate that you don't have as many units as some of the guys who are first into Alpharetta, you know, to sit there and make it work from a P&L standpoint. So it's not lost on me that you guys have done a good job, and just looking through your website and knowing what caliber of product you've brought to other parts of town is something that I think this community is going to be really, really proud of. And look, it's hard to be angry at anybody building $1 million+ single family homes in Alpharetta in 2021, because we just don't see a lot of them anymore. And so thank you for, you know, being willing to cut down on the density. And there's some unsightly things with that property that you guys are going to get rid of, and I appreciate that. As somebody who lives it, breathes it, drives it every single day, there are some things that are going away that are going to be really positive for this community. Thank you.
Any other discussion from council? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and call for a vote. And that is on the motion to approve the Hudson Park development with the conditions as read by Councilwoman Richard. All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And the matter does pass unanimously. Congratulations, gentlemen. So we'll move on to the third and final public hearing item this evening, and that is PH-21-10, Unified Development Code Text Amendment, Historic Preservation Incentive Zoning. Director Cook, I believe you have the floor. Stay on your toes, Stephen. You're coming up next.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This next item is in consideration of 126 North Main Street, and it's shown here located on the west side of North Main Street, kind of across from Cumming Street. It's consideration of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code, Article 2, Appendix A, Historic Resources Inventory, Contributing Historic Buildings, and Appendix A, Alpharetta Downtown Code, subsection 3.2.4, to remove 126 North Main Street from the contributing historic property list. And let me put a picture of what that looks like. So there's several different reasons to consider adding a property to the contributing historic properties list. Of looking at this particular property and looking through the history, we don't believe that it meets that criteria. There is some discrepancy on the age of the structure, onto whether it is 75 years old. But some of the other issues that we are recommending that this be removed have to do with the criteria itself, which says, is it an outstanding example of a building that's representative of its era? We did not find that. Is it one of the few remaining examples of a past architectural style or type? And when we got this information from the Historical Society, they did not include a type, so there's not an architectural type or style for this particular property. Or number 3, is it a place associated with an event or person or historic or cultural significance in the city, the region, the state, or the nation? And we couldn't find any information to show that that was the case for this particular property. We also spoke to the owner, Judge Roberts, who I believe is here, about the history, and he stated that it was his understanding that it was built after 116, which is also on the contributing historic properties list, and that's the property next door, also owned by the Roberts family, and it's being used for the violin store. And some of the things that the information that he provided to me is that this particular structure, it actually has built with sheetrock. The property that's beside of this, it's the violin store, the 116, that was actually, it was wooden with plaster, so the construction's very different. So going through that history of, there's some discrepancy of which one of these was built before the other. Also, with this particular structure at 126, there's been a lot of additions and changes. I mean, even the kitchen was removed for the law office. So a lot of changes, so we don't believe that this should remain on that list. And this was also brought to the Planning Commission at the May 6th meeting. There was no public comments. They did recommend approval, subject with actually, it was a 7-0, so it was a unanimous recommendation. If you have any questions or concerns, I'll be glad to try to answer those.
Have any questions from council for staff? Stephen, you are up, my friend.
Thank you for the headset, Mayor. This is an ordinance to amend Article 2 in Appendix A, Alpharetta Downtown Code of the Unified Development Code of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to remove 126 North Main from the contributing historic property list and to repeal conflicting ordinances and for other purposes. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
If there's anyone that would like to come forward and speak on this item, now's your opportunity to do so. If you will, please just state your name and your address for the public record.
My name is Brian Ritchie, 204 Violet Garden Walk. I'm in the West Main subdivision. Admittedly, here I'm a little bit here on a tangent issue, but at the end I think it'll make sense. I'm really here for 2 reasons. The first reason is you probably remember we were here 18 months ago when West Main came charging in, about 30, 40 of us, got in communication with the staff, and we were very concerned just about all the development going on, but it was specifically the office building behind us, and we understand that building. It's going to be beautiful. We came in with a list of a lot of things we wanted. We lost almost all of them. We won a couple, and we were appreciative for the couple. The one issue that was outstanding was the Cumming Street extension through the Lily Garden. And for us, that remains a big issue for our neighborhood. We're full now. We have 24 townhomes full, 2 cars per townhome, 48 cars. Park 12 is going to be done hopefully soon. That'll be 24 more cars. And already as it is, getting on Canton Street in the morning is very difficult. When my daughter drives to school every morning, I always look at the Life 360 just to make sure she got there safe, and I'm not exaggerating. Someone's going to get in an accident there because there's so much traffic. We love living there. The residents of West Main want to be great Alpharetta citizens. I think the restaurants love West Main. I think the farmers market loves West Main. We're doing our best to support and fill them up. But the issue of the coming connector remains a big one for us. And it's hard for us to imagine more traffic coming through to get onto Canton Street. And the office building's going to bring people in too. So it's hard for us to see. And actually the other reason I'm here, I know 3 minutes, was we were honestly kind of inspired by an article in the Milton Herald the other day, and the headline was this: residents ask Alpharetta Council to scrap street extension plans. It was regarding the Margine project. And honestly, when we saw that, we were like, gosh, maybe there's some hope if we try to talk it out, versus one day coming out on Lillian saying, man, it's done. Like you guys had your chance, you said nothing. So I'm here to say something, because it means a lot to our neighborhood. And what specifically people, looked at was 2 paragraphs, and I'll get out of here. There was, the first paragraph was, while there was no official agenda item on the issue Monday, which is kind of like me, City Councilman Donald Mitchell told residents that they would not be left out of any future discussions on the matter. Mitchell said he met last week with leaders from the 3 homeowners associations affected by the project, and he gave his word that nothing would proceed on the Margin Way extension project without their input. So I'm kind of here just to ask for the same courtesy. So maybe we could meet with you too and share some of our thoughts and our opinions. Those are the 2 primary reasons I'm here. Again, when we were here last time, we encouraged you to come take a look at Canton in the morning from the perspective of Lily. And just, maybe one of you could even hop in the car with my daughter and go to school with her. It would worry you if it was your kid. And granted, most of us are over 50 years old in West Main. There still are a few kids there, but my wife goes to work there too, and everybody's using it. So it's busier than we ever expected. I'm sure for you all, you probably could not have imagined it being that busy as well. But trust me, from 7 to 9, Canton Street is busy, and when we think of that extension coming through, we don't think less busy, we think busier. And we're not anti-growth. I think that was a great project that just went up there. I think it's going to be great for Alpharetta. I too run on Mayfield and go down that way, and I'll look forward to seeing a nice development there. So, 3 minutes.
Just to clarify, you don't object to the reclassification, just the street extension?
It's the street extension.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Our neighborhood does follow you all, just active citizens. So they follow your agendas, they follow what's going on, and someone brought up this historic thing in the last 48 hours in addition to the Margine project and said, hey, someone needs to go to the next meeting and tell them that we're aware. And we think it has a negative impact, the extension, not the historic home, the extension itself, we think could look like Manhattan in short time, given the new school and everything else that's going on Canton Street.
Thanks, sir.
You bet. Thank you.
If there's anyone else that would like to come forward at this time, now's your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, will close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion to approve PH-21-10 Unified Development Code text amendments, historic preservation incentive ordinance as read by Mr. Jones.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilwoman Richard and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, and that is to approve PH-21-10 Unified Development Code text amendment, historic preservation incentive zoning as read by City Attorney Stephen. Any discussion?
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
That's not, it's not anything I do lightly, but I do believe the dates were wrong when this was put on the historic contributing list. Sheetrock was not commonly used in the U.S. until the 40s and 50s, and although it was invented in 1909, it was not commonly used, certainly not in this area, until much later. So that would certainly put the house at being not 75 years old, especially when it went on initially. So I can support this. So thank you.
Councilmember Burnett.
A compliment to the pro tem for his handiwork a few weeks ago and his knowledge of the history of sheetrock. I too am supportive of this, and sir, I correspond with people in your neighborhood all the time. I'm very sensitive that these are not issues that are conflated, but I appreciate you coming out and advocating for the people that live in your neighborhood, because we need more of it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Councilman Binder.
My only request, since we're going along that tangent, is maybe putting up a workshop or something with Public Works, because I've said it before, we have about 90 million, maybe over 100 million now in projects, and we don't have nearly that much. So I'm more than okay taking the ones that are not resident supported, and I'd like to get them off the list so we can just kind of move on, because I know it's probably exciting stuff for us that watch the agenda every week, but maybe not so much exciting for y'all. So would like to kind of know how much more we got going on. So maybe we can make that a workshop coming up.
Any other discussion from council? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm asking you to cast your ballot on PH-21-10 Unified Development Code text amendment. It does pass unanimously. So that'll wrap up the public hearing items for this evening. We'll move on to the old business portion of tonight's agenda. We only have one item under old business, and that's
He just called you.
that is a pun. Senior Homestead Exemption Ordinance, AGI clarification. This is the second reading, so there's no public comment on this. Director Harris, you have the
Good evening,
floor.
Mayor and Council. Second reading. There's been no changes since the first reading was read to you.
Any questions from council? Stephen, it was a short item.
This is an ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta amending Article 1, Section 6 of the Charter of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to repeal conflicting ordinances, to provide for an effective date and for other purposes.
Thanks, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone would like to come forward and speak on this matter, now's your chance to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir. I move that we approve the ordinance amending Article 1, Section 6 of the city charter as it relates to senior homestead exemptions.
We have a motion by Councilman Binder and a second by Councilman Merkel, and that was to approve the change in the senior homestead exemption ordinance, the AGI clarification as read by city attorney. Any discussion? All those in favor, please vote yes, otherwise vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. So that'll wrap up the old business portion, and we'll move on to the new business portion of tonight's agenda. First item under new business is the resolution approval of the fiscal year 2021 Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant application. Director Robinson, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We are requesting a budgeted item, requesting approval to submit a grant application to the BGA 2021 Bulletproof Vest Grant. This is a 50% match requirement. Basically, the city would have to pay $23,247, which is half of the total amount of the grant, $46,494. We're estimating needing 83 vests through the calendar year 2022. This is based on expiration dates of current vests. Vests typically have a 5-year warranty, and so this will help us meet that need that is coming up for a vital piece of equipment for our police officers.
Thanks, sir. Stephen, you have a busy night this evening, my friend.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. This is and I have to read this one in full, so hang on. This is a resolution to authorize the mayor and city council to approve the submission of the 2021 Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant to the U.S. Department of Justice, whereas the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Justice Programs and Bureau of Justice Assistance made available funding under the Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant Act of 2000, and whereas such funds may be used to help purchase approved bulletproof vests for eligible law enforcement officers, and whereas this application round is to fund bulletproof vest purchased on or after June 14th, 2021, and whereas the City of Alpharetta has applied for funding through this program, and whereas the funding, if awarded, shall be utilized to help purchase new vests for Alpharetta's police officers, and whereas evidence authorizing the acceptance of said application must be provided, now therefore be it so resolved this 24th day of May, 2021 by the mayor and council of the City of Alpharetta that the submission of the 2021 Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant application is hereby approved, and if awarded, the mayor is hereby authorized to execute a award package with directives under the Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant Program.
I was thinking so. Thank you, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone wants to speak on the grant application for the Bulletproof Vest, now's your chance. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer a motion that council approve the resolution for approval of the fiscal year 2021 Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant application, funds from the city totaling not to exceed $23,247 to be matched by the Bulletproof Vest Grant.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Hypes and a second by Councilman Burnett, and that was for the resolution and approval of the Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant application. Total project cost is $24,247, and half of the cost will be funded from the city's grant account with balance funded through the grant. Any discussion? All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. So we'll move on to the second item under new business, and that will be the discussion and public input on Parks Bond referendum. Mr. Rogers? You have the floor, my friend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Council. The continuing conversation on the Parks Bond referendum, there has been some updates on some of the costs on some of those projects, and I think everybody received that information. Is that accurate? Okay. So I'd like to go over those real quick. The major ones, the major cost that actually changed the numbers were for the Wills Park Master Plan. The costs were significant in that. That went up a little over $3 million. Union Hill Park redevelopment and trailhead build out went up $1.7 million, and Old Rucker Park went up $1.6, and the Milton Avenue Park did go down $1.25 million. So right now we're talking with everything on the list, we're at $35 million on the park bond list, if you leave everything on that. There were some changes in of everything that's on the list right now is $35,010,000. There were some, we also looked at the Wills Park equestrian plan. There were some costs that went up on that, but we have developed a phase 1 and a phase 2 for that particular plan to keep the phase 1 at the $10 million request or $5 million request on the bond and a $5 million match from the Equestrian Foundation. I think that is a brief overview of where we're at with the park bond now. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from council? Thank you, sir. Director Harris, if I could, just wanted to clarify with the new projected cost, what the cost of a bond issue based on $35 million would be.
Yes.
It's a slide ruler.
Yeah, let me try to think about it. Okay, I got it. 35,010. So the old bonds are show 85%. Yeah, I'm trying to do this. $1,940,000, almost $1,950,000.
1.940, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
1.940. 1,941,000. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't round it. I have to use the exact number.
No, that's fine. Like I said, most of the discussions have been around a $29.5 million bond. That was 1.65, I believe, right?
Yes, 1.65. That's the conversion of that 1.65 to the $1,940,000, correct.
Okay.
I mean, and I do think some of the projects that Mr. Director Rogers was just referring, there's probably a few that could also possibly be phased two in that number, phased in as part, to scale it back to a smaller number to get the numbers, underneath 35, if that was the will.
Okay. Well, thank you for pointing that out. Director Rogers, have y'all given any thought to how that could be done? Sorry, I didn't ask that before.
May have led you, but I believe it was on, is it the Rucker? Rucker project. These are the projects. Were you able to put that up? Do I need to hit something to focus it? Again, I can't see. Those are the numbers on the project.
If you could just expound upon, how you might be able to phase some of those projects that Director Harris implied that you had given some thought to how we might be able to get that number down to 29.5?
Yes, several of the projects, number one, we're still waiting on some of the conceptual drawings to be completed for some of the projects. And we have talked, at the 35,000 foot level about possibly phasing projects, even some of the smaller projects like the old Rucker Park could be phased once we have that plan done. So I think that kind of like what we did with the Equestrian Center, we have a total and then we phase to that total based on what the overall plan is. So we haven't had any specifics about moving where we're not going to do this at this park, but we're talking about being able to phase these projects as we need to based on the current conditions.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was clear. So you do have confidence that we could come up with a stage plan and remain at a $29.5 million bond amount?
Yes, I feel like.
And you could have that available to the public?
Yes.
Should we move forward at that point?
Yeah, I feel confident we could do that.
Okay. Councilman Binder, I believe you had a question.
I think you were.
Was Councilman Hypes first?
Yes, sir.
I apologize. He looked like I'd spanked his dog.
You sit down here on the end, and Director Harris, has anything changed in terms of our bonding capacity? At what point do we get to where we don't have that capacity, keeping in mind that we had a 4 to 5 year plan to provide for recurring capital and to build that fund back up? So is there a number that's just we're past a point of no return?
No, it's just a matter of prioritization. If you put in especially if you went with a bond this November and it approves, then we have to get that $1,650,000 or the $1,941,000 or whatever number it ends up being based on the project size. That will take precedent over recurring capital. And every year, the assumption is in their normal growth, we possibly can do $1.5 million of new initiatives every year. So if you remember that chart we had, we got to get our current $1,650,000 of recurring up to $5 million or north of $5 million. So it took a certain number of years to do that. If you do a bond at $1,650,000, then you just extended that plan a year because that utilizes one full year of new initiative dollars we can deal with. So when I've been asked what that I think is a reasonable threshold, given what we think of the budget right now. I think staying with our plan that we had back in January, I believe that bond size should try to come in at 29.5.
And let me ask the question with a little bit of hyperbole here. Do we have the capacity to do a $150 million bond?
Whatever you want to impose on a millage rate to the council?
No, without raising taxes.
Well, I mean, but that's ultimately, we have the capacity in our budget, capacity to do it. We would not do it if you have to raise that kind of millage rate on the public.
So there is a number if we're trying to keep our taxes intact.
Correct.
Without raising them. And if we're going to address substantially or at least minimally our recurring capital needs, because the more roads we build, the more we have to pave, the more sidewalks, the more greenway, the more we have to maintain. If I'm hearing you, to accomplish recurring and to provide debt service for a bond of 29.5, 30 million is sort of the spot to build that back up on the recurring.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Binder.
I don't know, hopefully we're discussing what next steps are, where we're going from there, but as both Director Rogers and Director Harris are up there, I'd like for you all also look at our priority list and seeing, so instead of phasing, but also what we can do is looking from the priority list. Milton Avenue, since it's been deducted to $750,000, maybe that's good enough, but I know there was some discussion. I don't remember what was decided or even if anything was decided about parkland acquisition and Alpha Loop being separated from each other, and there was maybe less interest, when we get everybody's opinion on it, less interest on land acquisition, seeing how we have a big pile of development projects. So maybe removing that piece out of it so we can get to some of these items that have increased. And then Mayfield Road one was kind of, we went back and forth on it, and since it's with Milton, that maybe we can look at that at a future date and kind of fund it over a few years in partnership with Milton. So that right there could be $3 to $5 million there to go back to some of the overages. But I think it's right. Things cost more today than they did yesterday, and no surprise, it'll probably cost more tomorrow than it does today. So, but can y'all look at that as part of an option to maybe take away from what we've discussed previously in our priorities?
I think part of our rationale here was to try to get these in the same order that appears that they were ranked and revised, mainly the numbers, mainly on Equestrian Center, because it's a project we needed to make sure, it comes in about 18 million if you follow everything on the master plan. Pete's numbers and working with a consultant came in about 18 million. So then our next goal was, let's just make sure we're able to describe, and I think it's primarily the stalls, correct? Redoing the stalls and a certain amount of things for that $10 million number, that threshold. And
so no, it's primarily the stalls and primarily the renovation of all of the rings,
right.
including the footings, which are extremely important in the equestrian world. So that's why some of the items on the equestrian center, like some of the seating and some of the shade structures and some of that are not as crucial to the hosting of a meet were moved to phase 2. And that's what I think we can look at all of these projects and have a discussion about which ones we can phase and which ones we can maybe either phase or not do as much. One of the things that I want to mention is kind of the reason that the Milton Avenue Park dropped down so much is because when it was decided we probably weren't going to build that road, then that took a lot of the stormwater and a lot of that we would have to do when we build a road. We don't have to do that right now. So we can develop that park a lot less now, since it's not going to be a part of a road project as well. So we can look at all of the other projects and see how we can phase that, cut back, and bring back some suggestions to that. If the
if the goal is to stay at 29.5. I mean, that's the.
At least for me, I'd like to stay at the 29.5 as the top end of the bond. My point again, furthermore, is we built the priority list, and if there's ways to pull from things that we've already discussed as a group, like land acquisition, like that Mayfield Park, pull from that rather than phasing in the top tier things. And then if we're still above 29.5, then start phasing in those top tier projects like Wills Park Master Plan, Union Hill, and Old Rucker Park.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Thank you. I would also concur with Councilmember Binder's comments there. On the Mayfield Park, I did speak with Mayor Pro Tem of Milton, Peyton Jamison, and they're nowhere near. At the max, it would be a couple of hundred that they would throw in a bond, or they've got bigger priorities and bigger parks they're trying to produce and create. And so Mayfield Park is not a priority for them. So I think a lot of us were looking at that if there's a match from Milton, but since that's not there, I would concur with Councilmember Binder. Thank you.
Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My sentiments, and I talked to Councilmember Hypes in the last couple of weeks about making the Alpha Loop a standalone line item, because I do think it has a more broad appeal, and it draws, people. It's populism. Everybody who goes out there likes it. And I think that I don't want to offend anybody, but if we took parkland acquisition out and reallocated $2 or $3 million to the 3 projects we see a little bit higher, all of a sudden it gets a lot easier to get to 29.5. And it kills me to pull Mayfield because that was the one that I added, but if that's how you count to 7, then I'm willing to concede the $1 million there. And then I think that we're landing the airplane at $29.5 million, and we're funding projects at what professionals are telling us they are going to cost the city. I think everybody always gets a little bit of what they want, and everybody always leaves a little bit disappointed, and that's just kind of the nature of compromise in politics in general. So, not that a bond on parks is political, but I do think that that's a creative way to get there, and I'm willing to pull the Mayfield Park out, for the greater good, because, it's important to me, but there's wisdom in the other 6 of you. Thank you.
Any other comments from council at this time? Councilman Hypes?
Question, if there is public input, I may want to withhold any further comments until I hear from the public. If there's not, then I have some further comments.
There is. That's why we're having a public, new business item, so that it gives an opportunity. Although I have given opportunities for workshops, it's not typically done. And so this isn't an item we'll be voting on tonight, but it does formally give the public an opportunity to speak.
And I'll just withhold any further comment until I hear from the public.
Okay. I will say that I agree that we should keep it to 29.5. I think, first of all, part of the challenge with the Alpha Loop Parkland acquisition is we're counting on T-SPLOST 2 passing to get Alpha Loop funding. And we won't know that until November. And so to take that out completely, and if T-SPLOST doesn't pass, we have 0 funding and 0 opportunities to fund any more of the Alpha Loop for 5 years. So I'm concerned about that. I will say, despite the fact that 2 of our council members believe that building a path to a creek between the Georgia 400 sound barrier and a QT is a top priority, the top priority of all these projects for $2 million. I wholeheartedly disagree. And if I'm going to support a bond issue and something's going to go, I don't see how I support it coming from parkland acquisition or the Alpha Loop, which I consider far higher priorities. Mayfield Road, I certainly have no objection to take that off, and the Milton Avenue, but that only recovers about 1.75 at this point. So that's just my thoughts and input as we start trying to whittle this down or decide how we price it appropriately. That being said, any other comments or questions? Councilwoman Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think what I understood on the discussion about the Alpha Loop and the Parkland acquisition, $6 million, was that there was a belief that we really shouldn't be moving forward on the acquisition standpoint since we've got so many parks that we still have left to build out. And so perhaps take $3 million off of that. That would compensate for not moving forward with the Parkland acquisition and still leaving $2 or $3 million for the Alpha Loop. Yeah, that's what I heard too. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, well then, I certainly appreciate the clarification, but my concern going in, and one of the reasons that was on there to begin with, is because nothing on here had any impact on the North Point corridor. And so we added that in with the intention of giving us some money that we could acquire green space along North Point and perhaps build something into that corridor, barring any other funding sources available. So if you do that, I see what you're saying, but it takes off one of, to me, the biggest benefits of doing a bond issue is being able to help spur some park development along the North Point corridor, and I don't see where it comes from otherwise. Councilman Heights.
Well, this does kind of bring me back to where I was going to jump in, and that is Councilman Burnett is right in terms of the bond, parks bond. I do believe they're prioritized differently when the Alpha Loop is split out. But the big unknown is on our T-SPLOS 2 list, there's a line item prioritized for the Alpha Loop for $10 million. But my problem with all of this is I keep in communication with Director Harris, and I understand that we can borrow approximately $30 million worth of money and in 4 or 5 years rebuild our recurring capital reserve to get back to where we were pre-COVID. So we really can't go much beyond that. And, you know, we won't know our post-COVID tax digest until July or August. But more importantly, we won't know the outcome of the T-SPLOS, including Alpha Loop items, et cetera, until this November election. And we're putting our fate into the hands of Fulton County voters, which last time passed 52-48. So if I was sitting here to handicap it, I would say based on experience, we got a 52% chance that this thing's going to pass. I know that's not good math, but you know, if T-SPLOS doesn't pass and we pass this parks bond referendum now rather than waiting till after the T-SPLOS and pass a bond referendum in May of next year, when November comes around, if T-SPLOS passes, I'm committed to moving forward with a bond for the parks. I trust our director that we can afford that and we can still meet our other needs for recurring capital. But with $30 million available, if T-SPLOS doesn't pass, and I'm to look at that T-SPLOS 2 list, and I'm to listen and take to heart my fellow council members who say crosswalks are important at these middle schools for the safety of our children. Alpha Loop is a high priority. We're all in as a council on North Point, and that's a $10 million line item to you know, rejuvenate the North Point area. I'm in favor of a bond referendum in May, but I cannot know whether I believe my vote would be in the best interest of the city to go with a transportation bond, a parks bond, or a mixture of both until I know that we have a funding source from T-SPLOS. And it bothers me greatly that if we pass this parks bonds referendum prior to November, and if T-SPLOS fails, we've got a lot of capital issues and a lot of development issues that are essential to the city, talking about North Point, safety issues, et cetera. And in exchange for that, I'm not a fan of the farmhouse settlement, but I'll just say it. I mean, we will have prioritized that over the safety of our children at crosswalks and over North Point, because there is no more money to do another bond if T-SPLOST fails. So I'm interested in the conversation. To anybody who is listening, I implore you to, email me, jhypes@alpharetta.ga.us. I want to know what you think about this. I want the public to weigh in on this because I think it's a big deal.
Any other comments or questions from council at this time?
Just matter of.
Councilman Binder.
So are we looking at having another week's worth of public input on the processes, hopefully having staff come back with the phasing plan in there, so it's another week's worth of public input on our first meeting in June?
I would assume, based on the conversations we're having tonight, we're going to have another bite at this apple.
I think that's good. I definitely understand. Past history, we voted on a parks bond previous to T-SPLOST. We're never going to have all the information available to make decisions, and that's just part of life in general. I'm out there 110% to work with people to find solutions, and I agree with you. There's concerns there, so I think it's on the 7 of us to not just bring up issues or what ifs, but also, okay, how do we do that? And then just kind of go through the risk analysis tree of what will we do there? And that's all I'm asking there. And if anybody has a question, we're all here. So email the council email for us, and that's what we're trying to do. So I definitely appreciate the concerns that you have, Councilmember Hypes, and they are good ones. But let's work together to find some solutions and to see what there. But we've spent a good 2 years, and I think it's been a good process of finding ways and stepping back and figuring out what we can do. But on the other end of it, we can say, okay, prices are going to even be more expensive. We learn that every year. Interest rates and the cost of borrowing is going to be more expensive. So it's on both sides of the risk. So it's never easy. But looking forward to the conversation next week.
Any other questions or comments from council? Councilman Burnett.
I always appreciate the concern, and I know that I think we're all relatively responsible with how we choose to look at things. But as you carry $6 million to the bottom line every single year, and I realize that money goes into fund balance, I can't tell you when I wanted to sit here and cut property taxes. People live here for the stuff, and now we're trying to give them the stuff. And then it's, well, what about this? And it's just, you can have a circular argument with yourself forever. And it's not that one way is right or one way is wrong, but I'm firmly in favor of a $29.5 million bond. I've sacrificed my pet project in order to keep it moving, and I'm sensitive to the fact that there's 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't do something, but there's also, I think people live here because, I know when I first moved to Alpharetta, you drove by Wills Park, there's nothing like it. And there are parts of it that are falling apart. And if they're falling apart, then they need to be invested in. And when you look at the interest rate climate, if you look 15 years from now and you're carrying debt at, I'll use Tom's latest number of 35 million and 1.9. It sounds like a lot of money today, and it is a lot of money today. But in 20 years, is $1.9 million even close to as much money? The answer to that is no. You can't find a 10-year period in the United States government's history where a dollar has been worth less a decade from the present date. It hasn't happened. And I think that you absorb some of that with tax digest growth. I think it's time to put one foot in front of the other and show these people that we're capable of doing something. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council at this point? Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards?
We do not, sir.
But if there's anyone here that wants to come forward and speak on the bond issue, now is your opportunity to do so. If you could, please state your name and address for the public record.
Okay. My name is Gary Oberchett. I live at 2441 Loxford Lane, Alpharetta, Georgia. I've listened to the discussion here on this bond issue, and I started thinking about the T-Splosh 2 and the impact. If, according to Mr. Harris, that $30 million is the top number. If we wait until May, as Mr. Councilman Hypes has suggested, I think we would be in a better position at that point. The Fed has said they're going to keep interest rates low into 2024. So I think interest rates, at least through next May, will be low. So I don't think we have to worry about the rates going up significantly between now and then. But without T-Splosh, we got road projects that we need to do. And if we've already maxed out at 30 million, we have no money left to do the road projects. So I think that needs to be a consideration when you're looking at this. Do we split it? Do we bifurcate these T-Splosh vote and the bond issue, the parks bond issue? I think that might not be a bad idea. People are also looking at, these are 2 tax increases coming up. So, and people are concerned about the federal government and increased taxes going forward. So you might have an issue in putting them both on board at one time and getting them passed from a public standpoint. Just some things to think about. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else in the public that would like to come forward and make a public comment at this time? Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. And since there is no vote on this item tonight, that will wrap up the new business portion of tonight's meeting. And ladies and gentlemen, if you've been here this long, I hate to do this to you, but I think we probably need a 5-minute break. If we could, we'll be back in 5 minutes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of getting all of us home at some reasonable time this evening, we will go ahead, call this meeting back to order. And as we come back to order, we'll begin with the workshop. And first workshop item is the Encore Greenway Connection. Director Sasevich.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. Before and I are going to present three concepts that have been developed through AECOM and working with our stakeholders. When I say the stakeholders, I'm referring to Public Works, Community Development, Recreation and Parks, and Cultural Services, and the North Fulton CID. And what we did is we had three concepts. Concept 1 and Concept 2 I'm going to show you tonight were presented by AECOM to the team, to the stakeholders, and Concept 3 is a collaboration of the three. And we'll start with Concept 1. I might have to zoom it in. Okay, that works. All right. So on this concept here, what you'll notice is the Greenway Trail is 12 feet wide. It's along the car wash property. The engineers looked at it, and the land planners looked at this site and saw the hillside, build the trail somewhat into the hillside. It minimizes the amount of piers we have for the raised greenway. The inner loop you see there, that is about 70 feet by 115 feet in depth. And it is a lower level. It brings you lower down to the stream area, still out of the floodplain, but it brings you closer to nature. E is the plaza entry area there, and we still haven't come up with a gateway feature. We're going to work on those details as once we figure out an alignment that we like to go with. But that's about 40 feet from the edge of the road radius, basically. So it's a big gathering area, big open area. And then you have this big garden terrace with trees, which specific trees have not been determined yet. It's more of the concept that we're looking at. But elevated pedestrian canopy walk is the parks-like setting. So what we had is we had the Greenway connection, we had the gateway area that we're focusing on, and then we have like a park-like setting. And those are the three components you're going to see in all three of these concepts. Concept 2 took it, again, working along the side of the car wash, but bringing a trail connection off of North Point Parkway and tying into the elevated greenway, having a viewing area, which is F, at that connection point. Again, it's bringing you lower to nature. You can see it some more. The terraced seating you see at the top is playing into the slope. It's a sharp drop off after North Point Parkway. So utilizing the slope, building it in, and taking advantage of the topography instead of trying to work completely against it. This one received, was well received by the team as well. And then the third one was a collaborative effort. It was actually quite interesting to see everybody in here at the table working along and took components of 1 and 2. And this is actually the preferred concept. And what they did is they brought the greenway over the stream, got rid of the connection directly off of North Point Parkway. They brought the connection over the stream for two reasons. One, if the car wash ever gets developed, you can still have a trail connection into from the car wash property to the greenway, as well as from the old Ethan Allen development. The other concepts, you still had to cross quite a distance and go over that stream. So the vacant Ethan Allen development you could tie into. The ring is still there. That was a really good focal point. That was well received by the North Fulton CID as well as Morgan and his team. And North Fulton CID also mentioned how they'd like, on concept 2, elongating the park-like setting in front of North Point Parkway. And that's where we looked at adding some more trees and extending North Point Parkway to bring your attention to this area. Again, we still have to come up with a gateway feature. That hasn't been developed yet. But what we're working now is trying to determine, the goal for tonight is to figure out which concept alignment you prefer. We could get into the details of a ring or no ring. That's fine. But what we're trying to do is maintain our schedule and focus on which of the greenway connections works best? What do people enjoy? This curvature, the S curve we're calling it, or more closer towards the car wash? And then the elements inside the park can progress.
Thank you, Pete. I appreciate all your work on this. Y'all did a great job.
Thank you all.
Councilman Burnett.
I like the ring. I'm pro ring. I like the S feature. I don't know how anybody else feels. I have not discussed this with anyone. So
Saying you like number 3 here?
yes, thank you.
Any other council input? Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
I'm also fine with 2 or 3. My concern is that the whole point of this park was to draw people to the Greenway and to help sell the Greenway as a part of the Alpha Loop and Encore Parkway. So I really think those columns, at least 2 of them need to go up and have a Greenway signage or something like that, something bold and big so that you can see it. Otherwise, when you're looking from North Point Parkway, you're just going to see other trees that look like nice landscaping, but I guess if I had to choose, my favorite would be number 3. So, all right, thank you.
No, it makes perfect sense.
Any other? Councilwoman Richard.
So you're asking us tonight to give you our
Feedback.
preference? Okay.
This is a workshop.
Well, okay, we want to be productive. I like 3 as well. I think that, I think the curvature is, really sets that off, and I think it makes it really interesting and inviting. I agree with Pro Tem in regards to the sense of arrival that we need to create there as far as signage is concerned, because without that, I think you just fly right by it and you don't really appreciate what the opportunity is there. So I think that needs to be an important part of it. But without seeing the prices for any of them, 3 would be my preference.
We do have pricing.
We do?
You want to go ahead and share that pricing?
So it's approximately 1,400 linear feet of the Greenway, no matter which concept you go with. The
Right.
pricing's coming in around 2.2 million just for the Greenway connection.
Right.
On top of that, you're looking at the plaza area. You're looking at about another $500,000. And then you're also looking at doing the connection down by where everything interconnects down to the existing Greenway, which is not shown on this drawing because we haven't quite figured that out. We know what we're tying into. So it's getting you right up to about $4.2 million in total, everything you see in concept 3. Now, we know, but a lot of that, we thought originally 1.6, 1.7 was going to be the original number back in February. We were talking about the Greenway connection, 1.7. It's ballooned up, of course. So that's been a big hit to it. The design team has identified phasing for this to take place and to keep things moving and progressing nicely. So we can always look at the phasing aspect.
Do you have pricing on the other 2?
They each go down by basically about $750,000. So 1 and 2 are right around $3.5, $3.6 million are pretty well equal because of the trail connection. The trail connection is consistent. That cost is 2.2 no matter what. The entry feature and the Greenway all the way down to the tie-in connection.
Councilman Hypes.
More of a question than or maybe more of a comment than a question. I certainly highly value the connection of the Alpha Loop down to the Greenway. Value that highly. And by the way, I like the main path of number 3 because I sort of remember the topography drops off very steeply, and so the almost like a switchback there I think probably works pretty well. However, this area of the North Point corridor, obviously there could be future development, or it might just be the existing mid-rise office buildings there, whereas there has been some effort toward the east end of the mall, the Haynes Bridge end of the mall, where there is the stormwater park. And I just question and pose the question, if we have finite funds, where will we get the most development dollars? Is it a fancier gateway entrance to this greenway entrance here, given the overall design for the future of the North Point corridor? Or would dollars spent at that stormwater park adjacent to private development, would that be of a greater benefit to the overall development of the corridor? I don't really have an answer. I just throw it out there to pose a question. These are sizable dollars right here. So.
Councilman Binder.
So at our last agenda item, we said to wait for a bond so we could do work at North Point, and now we're going to wait to do work at North Point for about, I'm for having this done now, and I think it's great, something that we can strive to, and something that's a biteable chunk. But at some point, we're going to have to put a shovel in the ground somewhere. But I would love to see here also, while we're talking about the concepts, I know our CEO of the CID, Brandon Beach, is here, and crew, so would love to hear what they have to say too, is what their preference, because we have some good partners, and I want to make sure partners say their share. But I think all three are good, but like anything, it's just where we got with scope and money and time. So we'd love to hear from the CID.
Pete, let me ask you. I'm kind of thinking we go with a hybrid version of number 3, except instead of doing a full loop like that, why don't you just connect down to the elevated greenway down here and maybe cut the cost of that loop in half?
You're welcome. So, that, like, if I follow you, it's eliminate the loop.
No.
No.
I'm saying on number 3, where you have the full loop there,
Yes, sir.
instead of looping back up to the plaza, bring that loop down and just combine it with the elevated greenway. Yeah.
Okay, so basically cut off the left, as you're looking at the drawing, the left-hand side.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is a hybrid between 2 and 3.
Yeah. The only thing I don't know about that, if that will work, is the topography that we got to play with, is the grade coming down and all that, but we'll most definitely look into it and see what it is. I've got slope coming down, we'll just see, yeah.
I mean, like I said, it's kind of a similar version to 2, but it's not as large a loop as on 2.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yes.
Just something to play with, because I do like 3 the best, but I think if you did that, it would still retain of what makes the connection to the greenway better, which is the great part of 3, without losing too much of that character of the loop on 2. Now, if we could please have any representation from the CID. And Senator Beach, we are very appreciative that you sat through public hearing night with us to do this.
I miss being
work.
on council.
Now you remember why you moved on to bigger and better things.
Long time ago. But Brandon Beach, 3100 Briarfield, Alpharetta 3004. Thank you all for having me tonight. And thank you for this project. We've invested $230,000 in it as a CID. Y'all called us and said this was a priority and you wanted us to invest, and we did, and our board is fully behind it. We met at the chamber. I want to thank Pete, Kathy, and the Parks and Recs Director, Mr. Rogers, that came, and we looked at all these, and 3 was kind of the choice everybody came up with, but whatever y'all decide, we still are fully supportive. And I just want to thank y'all for what you do on transportation. You know, we met with Commissioner McMurray today. Councilman Burnett set up a meeting, and Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell was there. Councilman Richard was there. Bob, Kathy, and I forget who else was there. One other. Oh, Pete. Yeah. Pete was there, the main man. But that's several times we've went down there and met with the commissioner. And one of the things Commissioner McMurray has told me several times is the city of Alpharetta puts skin in the game, and they're proactive, and they've got their project list ready. They come down, they know what they want to do, and they ask. And you went down there with us, I guess, about a year ago, and we got money for Old Milton. And you got to go ask, and you got to tell them that you want to do things. And so we appreciate your partnership. And when you look at the CID, Bob, it's been 2003 is when we founded the CID. And so it's been about 18 years, and we've brought in about $30 million of revenue, $32 million, and we've leveraged that for about $129 million. Best example was West Side Parkway. We put up $1.8 million and got a $25 million road built. The other one was just recently, we cut the ribbon on the triple left lanes on Windward, and we were able to invest about $850,000 and get a $9.5 million project built, and I think that's going to be good when we get out of COVID. But I would tell you this on a economic development standpoint, what we hear from our members of the CID coming out of COVID-19, you know, the first thing they want when they move here from an economic development standpoint is good schools and an educated workforce, so they have an employee base to draw from. Number two is public safety chief. They want to know that there's a safe place to live for their employees. But more and more increasingly, they want amenities like this for their employees coming out of COVID-19, where people can go and walk a greenway or walk the Alpha Loop. We've also invested $250,000, I believe, in the Alpha Loop. So we're firmly behind what you guys are doing, and I just wanted to come here and let you know that we support you. When you look at our CID, we have 3 cities, but 85% of our CID is in Alpharetta. And as I said, and Ms. Richards heard me today when I was talking to Commissioner McMurray, I served 8 years on the GDOT board and represented several cities in Cobb and Cherokee, and they all were good. But I got to tell you, you guys got your act together. Y'all are proactive. You don't wait for that mall to die, like I said, like when that place did. You've got ideas. Y'all are going to get that thing back to where it needs to be, and not let you know, Avalon kill that mall. It's got a great opportunity, and what y'all have done in the city of Alpharetta, the downtown area. I remember when I sat in that seat right there. Well, it was in the old building.
I was going to say, you never sat in that seat.
In the old building, and we would leave council meetings at 10:30 at night, and you could have shot a shotgun. And now to see people out and having, you know, drinking beer and having dinner and with their families walking out here, y'all have done a great job. So we just want to let you know we appreciate you, and we're here to support you. And anything we can do to help with this project, we're 100% behind this. So, and any other projects. And you got a great guy right here, Pete, and I know DOT really thinks a lot of him. So, Councilman Burnett, thank you for setting that meeting up today. That was a good meeting, and I've already talked to Russell, and he's going to be there for us. And we're gonna have more money coming in from hopefully a federal program, and we're going to look at other opportunities. So, thank you very much, and we're here to help in any way we can. Okay.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your team over at the CID and all your support. Any other comments or questions from council at this point?
We're good.
Just see if 2.5 makes any sense. If the numbers can cut off $500,000 or $1 million, that might be worthwhile, if you don't mind.
No, we'll get things going. We'll get another sketch of 2 and 3 together, and get you a phasing plan as well with some of the dollars associated with that. But we'll get things going, and hopefully next step is to get some soil borings done in this area to figure out what our soil types are, so we can then start figuring out. That's part of the reason. It's good and bad. Good in the sense of they had to be very conservative with their cost estimating. The soil comes back better than anticipated. The numbers go down. So, and there is some good signs out here.
One of these days, the soil borings will come back on the good side. I keep waiting for that day. But one of the times, it has to. All right. Thank you very much, Pete. We appreciate it. Next workshop item is the presentation and discussion for the recommended fiscal year 2022 budget. Director Harris, you have the floor once again.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is our third workshop on the budget. Last Friday, I sent out the notes from the workshops before and sort of the latest status of where they are. And then this budget ultimately Got another $12,500 for the storage project, and Meadowsbrook Hills drainage design for $250,000 is now brought in, is funded from the stormwater appropriations that were already in the budget. So that's the only changes since the last workshop.
Any questions from council at this time? No. Councilman Binder says no questions allowed, but if there are any, I will entertain them. Seeing none. Thank you, Director Harris, and thanks to the whole team. I know it's been a lot of moving parts throughout this budget process, but I think we're getting close, if not there already.
Be up June 7th for the first reading.
Thanks, sir. We appreciate all the efforts. Just don't let the numbers go south of us any further. So that'll wrap up the presentation and discussion for the recommended fiscal year 2022 budget, and we'll move on to the review design concept for the park at the corner of Highway 9 and Milton Avenue. Director Rogers, once again, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm going to sit here because I think this is a station that works the best. So we're going to end tonight, hopefully on a positive note. We're going to be talking about our design concept that we have for what is right now known as O-L-E Milton Park. O or Ole? Ole. It's Ole without the hyphen. Old Milton Park. Yeah. So just so everybody understands what we're talking about, this is the location. You can see the new hotel that is opening soon. Kind of give you an idea of the scale of the project. And then I wanted to show you this one because one of the things we're going to be talking about is the Christmas tree. This is a good showing that Christmas tree is actually eating away at the oak tree there. And to take you through, if you look inside the tree, all of these pictures were taken after lunch today, so they are accurate. You can see what that tree looks like. That tree is declining. That Christmas tree is declining. Is it me?
Sorry, Director Rogers. The video, the picture on our screens is a video. It's like as if there were an earthquake.
Last time it was the noise. Remember the clicking, and this time is the screen. We're going to get you in that tree. So you can see, even though just pretend like it's a windy day and the tree's moving a little bit, you can see that the tree is in a declining stage there. And if you'll also look, that all of the limbs are pointing down. And when we put lights on this tree, we literally have to go in and support the limbs so they can hold the lights up. And then, so just to show you a couple of amenities of the park, we have the fountain, and then the gazebo, which was built by the Land and Water Conservation Fund back in I think that one was actually added in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. This is probably a shot you haven't seen. This is, since I'm a little bit taller, I can actually hold my camera above the fence and take a shot down the road. And you can see where they have put in the brick pavers for part of the road, and then the transition into the park that we're going to talk about in just a minute. Several things that are important to the park. There's some historical markers you can see on the picture on the right. The time capsule there on the left is part of there, as well as the monument on the left. And we were also given the cornerstone for the Webb building that was built in 1907. So we're thinking that needs to be incorporated into the park. But I just wanted to show you that. And these are the amenities that we have right now. There are 3 benches that you see there and a chair that matches the benches, but those are memorial benches with name plates and plaques on them as well. And then just to kind of show you what our benches and our trash cans look like in downtown Alpharetta, so you can have a visual. And then, so then that brings us to the schematic drawing that we have. This one was drawn by Steve Manley. I think everybody knows Steve. He's a local architect, a landscape architect. His office is actually on Old Canton Street, so he has a vested interest in this. And then I'm going to ask Steve to come forward and explain his drawing to it. And then I have a couple of comments to follow up that once Steve has presented. Steve?
Mayor, council, good evening. Glad to bring up the rear here. So we've been tasked with a pretty important piece of property in city of Alpharetta, in a prime park. So a couple of our goals were to increase visibility through the park, to the hotel, to what's beyond, and increase the usability of the park, so improve the usability. So to that end, we are pretty much taking out all of the landscape, except the two large oak trees. And the two large oak trees are still viable trees, as opposed to the Christmas tree that is probably, it is on its way out. I think our city arborist has taken a look at that one. So that's going to help our visibility. The other goal of usability, bringing up the backside of that park with a retaining wall. So the retaining wall would be on the west side of the park. Boy, it is vibrating, isn't it? Be on the west side of the park, and the retaining wall, we don't have a survey yet, but the retaining wall looks like it's going to be 2.5 to 3.5 foot high. And that'll be split with a wide staircase that'll improve our circulation then right directly through the park. The fountain will stay. The gazebo will be relocated. All of the pavement will be redone. So inside of the park is all scored concrete. Around the perimeter, we're using the standard Alpharetta pavers. You can see that it's fairly symmetrical with the fountain being the center focal point, except as you get over to Old Canton Street. And the reason it jogs over to the north is because there is a power pole right there just to the left of the steps. And that power pole needs to stay unless we have a lot of money to move it. So there's 3 power poles on this piece of property, and there's a multitude of wires going to those power poles. I wish we could move them, but I think they're there to stay. So that is, this plan does show the increased sidewalk that is going to be proposed by GDOT or proposed to be installed by GDOT. We are showing 3 street trees along that area, 7x7 tree wells, and the width of that sidewalk right there is about 18 feet. So we got good width right there.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or feedback from City Council on this workshop item? Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Thank you. You know, the existing furniture was donated by a lot of our seniors and folks who had served on council and folks who had worked with the city and stuff. So I'm hoping we can repurpose that perhaps over at the Mansell House in the garden there or somewhere that you think is appropriate. But I did have, it looks like these are low-lying benches. Are there some available from our new bench collection, like our city-approved bench? Is there a low-lying bench without a back that we can use there that still looks historic but not
There is.
overly modern?
It actually matches those benches. This was not meant to be necessarily a backless bench. It's just indicating a bench.
Okay, all right, super.
I would prefer a backless. I mean, I would prefer a back on the bench.
Oh, good, okay, all right, super, thank you.
Any other comments?
We could certainly take the furniture that's there, the benches that are there, clean them up. I think we could have them, washed and then recoated and relocated to a, back to municipality.
Even the urns that are in there, we could utilize those as well, so, for the garden club and stuff. Thank you.
And you're specifically talking about the memorial benches?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure I understood.
Well, probably, and now just thinking off the top of my head, probably what we would do is with the benches that we're moving in, we could put a plaque on those. We would probably replicate the plaque that's on the current benches and put them on a new bench. So that the memory of that bench stays there without the actual bench staying there, which would not fit into the.
That's fine. That's just, I just want to make sure I understood that we were talking about pulling the memorials out of there and using the others. Councilwoman Richard.
Thank you, Mayor. The gazebo, that's going to be relocated off-site?
Yes.
Okay.
Don't know exactly where, but there's lots of places in our parks that the gazebo would fit better than it does there. So
Great.
we certainly, I mean, it's a really good gazebo,
Yeah.
and it's well built. So
I'm glad to hear it can be repurposed. Yep, great. Thank you.
Any other input or questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
I'm sorry to bother you again. I did get a message from our public service, or public works gentlemen. The street trees will be dependent on size. GDOT needs to approve the plan, so thank you, Pete. Right, 10-foot sidewalks in front, so.
then that gives us 8 more feet apart.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Again, this is just a concept that we're bringing for you. We're, you know, it's a workshop, so we're not asking for approval. We'll certainly do that at a later date. I would ask, number one, 2 things that are kind of pending. One is, I think the tree needs to come down as soon as we can. Currently, they're taking, DOT is taking trees along the corridor down, so maybe if we take it down, they would get blamed for taking the tree down. Yeah, and then the other thing is that as part of the condition was that the hotel has to give us $50,000 for the improvement of Old Milton Park. What I would like to do is the ability to negotiate with the hotel about going in and putting that wall in, as shown on here, as they're completing their portion of it, so that that portion is done. And I don't know how we go about doing that. I didn't mean to drop that on you, but since they are in their final stages of construction, I think they would be very amenable to building that wall and making that connection to that park.
Does anyone on council have any objection to that?
Not at all.
Okay. Mr. Regis, do you mind facilitating that with the hotel?
No, I have a question. I have a question.
Great. I do have just one question. The pavers within this, are they going to remain the same as it is now, or is this contemplating different pavers around that whole?
Directly around the fountain?
Well, it looks to me like there's pavers throughout that whole area and.
No, that's indicating scored concrete.
Okay.
We would go
So
to concrete paving inside of the park, except for right around the fountain where there is specialty pavers there.
Gotcha.
Those would match the pavers on the perimeter.
Okay, thank you. I was just noticing that. Councilman Hypes.
Morgan, included with this design here, we've been generous with having public spaces being used by adjacent restaurants. Is it contemplated that this will be space that Mercantile Social will be putting tables onto and having nightly entertainment? If so, is Mercantile Social, contributing to this in any fashion?
So I don't know the answer to the first question. I think that would have to talk with Director Cook and look for some guidance on that. But it was not designed for it to be an overflow for the restaurant outlet.
Well,
I would assume it was not designed as an overflow.
They use it, and I have zero problem with this. I just want to have an understanding, and also if we're designing it and somebody pays X number of dollars per square foot for leased space, the heck is that? And But, we know that Chiringa uses the site, and it really doubles their space without having to pay rent. It creates an ambiance. I kind of like it. But nevertheless, if this kind of doubles the space for Mercantile Social, and they use it on Friday and Saturday nights, and it's just wonderful, is this something that they would appropriately participate in?
I'll get with Director Cook, talk about what's possible there, and we'll see where we go with that. Because, it's I know that space is opened up during COVID for use, and I don't know what the status of that is, so I don't.
But with music match and outdoor, I mean, it's a wonderful scene outside Mercantile Social in the park. But, it occurs to me that the hotel is going to participate in this. It's adjacent to their guests, and it's actually being used by Mercantile Social right now. So.
Right, Councilman Hypes. That actually ends next week, the end of May. So that was just for the COVID extensions. We were allowing the extra tables and chairs in city property, city park area, or parking spaces. So that actually ends.
And if I could, just one clarification, the greenery on that corner, on the southwest, all right, anyway, that corner, is that like a raised bed, or is that grass?
Planting is a ground cover. There is a wall right there that is going to be the same designed wall as the retaining wall. And that's there to create a little bit of an entry point for the park and a little bit of a separation from the park grass area and that busy, intersection walking area right there with all the poles. So.
Oh, I'm talking about if you go down to the bottom, the corner of North Main and Milton Avenue, that lower left corner there.
There's a little wall right there. That red is the wall, but the planting is not raised. It's flush. So it's same elevation as the walk.
And the light green, the squared off light green, is that turf or do you think real grass will grow there?
Ground cover. It's a planting, ground cover.
Okay.
or
Oh, thank you,
annuals or
Mr. Richard.
place for color.
Okay, thank you.
It's not a raised bed.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Thank you, gentlemen. Looks much nicer.
Okay. So just for my clarification, it's okay, Mr. Regis is going to start negotiations, and can we go ahead and begin removing the tree?
I have no objections.
Okay.
All right. That'll wrap up the workshops for this evening. If you've been waiting here all night for a public comment, now is your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Any reports this evening? Councilman Heights.
The Alpharetta Arts Center held the Paint the Town over the last week, and the Alpharetta Plein Air. And Karen and I, we went over to the Arts Center Saturday evening, and the paintings were just amazing. There are just great perspectives of things that are up close or from a distance, and it raised money for the Arts Center. It's my understanding that for each painting that sold, the Arts Center received 30% of that, and then that gets poured back into the community, the money that they collect. So I don't know how long those paintings will remain hanging on the wall over at the Arts Center. A good many of them were selling when we were over there for their open house, but there's just some great views of town, and I thought it was a great event. So I hope they do that again. It really brought the community together, and there was a lot of discussion both with the painters as they were painting and also over at the Arts Center when they were on display. And the best of the best won first place. I would have called it first place. Even though I don't have Donald's background in art, it just really stood out. And it was one of them that they painted in 2 hours of City Hall. And it was just beautiful. But
That's awesome. Any other reports?
That's what he got there first.
Mayor and Council, the Milton Council tonight followed y'all's lead and approved the co-location agreement with the courts. So now we'll buy furniture, we'll run fiber, and they'll move the last week of June, and it'll crank up court there the first week of July. So, yeah, good stuff.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Thank you very much for all the effort you and Brooke have put in on that item as well. Is that all the reports for this evening? Seeing no more? Ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. Thank you for coming. See you next time.